All right.
All
Uh,
right. Let's go.
welcome to our very professional review of Dexter Original Sin, Episode 1.
The best
I
show.
figure, yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I figure we're best off starting with our initial thoughts. So, would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first, Ian?
I'll go first.
Okay, go
So,
for it.
I remember I watched it and I sent you a text. Basically, all I said was I watched Original Sin episode 1, and you just said "and," like you were like, "What? Like what do you what did you think of it?" And it took me like probably a good like 30 minutes to really sum up what I thought. But most of it was I didn't really feel anything. It didn't really it kind of like phased through me. Like it didn't really have a lot going for it. It didn't really have a lot to say. It didn't really have a lot setting up. It felt more of the same of what we saw in the original show in terms of like like the like the flashbacks. It seemed like it was trying to capture the original Dexter, but at the same time, like I don't really think the actors have all the best chemistry together. And maybe as the season will go on, it'll get better. Maybe this was just like a slip up, but I don't know. I didn't couldn't really buy into a lot of these actors as these characters, and like we'll get into it specifically, but like characters like Masuka and Batista, they feel more like, oh, they look like them more than actually like being true representations of who these people are as like characters. And also like I don't know. There's only like one or two interesting ideas that they're kind of setting up that I kind of hope turn into something, but it really felt like a nothing episode. Like especially for a pilot, and especially for something that's supposed to be a gateway for not only Dexter fans but new people new to the franchise. It didn't really seem like it was setting up truly who Dexter is. Like, and obviously, if you're a fan of the original show, you don't need that. But if you're a person that like has no context, then I don't know. It felt like it didn't. I don't know. It felt like a continuation rather than a spin-off, rather than like setting up its own thing. If that makes sense. But yeah, that's truly my thoughts. Like I thought it was okay. The more I thought about it, the more it just didn't really impact me very well. I don't know. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's like the worst thing in the world, but it really it's just kind of a nothing episode. Like I like it's one of those rare episodes of TV where like the filler episode is like the beginning. Like it's the pilot. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good thing you're recording because I noticed about halfway through that my screen actually didn't record anything. So I'll have to
Oh,
probably get the
nice.
first 2 minutes from you eventually. But
That's okay.
yeah, so that was Ian's partial first thoughts. At least in the full upload, you'll get the whole thing, so don't worry. But for me, I think I'm kind of in the same boat. Initially, when they had talked about this being a project that they were going to pursue, I mean, I think the obvious thing for most people, and I've seen even news publications suggesting this as well, is that it's literally just Showtime wants a show for Dexter because Dexter is incredibly popular. It makes them money. That's about it. That's really the only reason that you would keep it going. It's not really that there are necessarily interesting stories, and that's not to say that you can't tell interesting stories with these characters, but as far as the storyline of Dexter Morgan, it's more or less done. It's been done twice. They've screwed up the ending twice, and so I think I said it to you at one point. I'm like, if you're going to do this, you really got to buy me in. You really need to make sure that you nail a couple things. And I was really, really underwhelmed by a lot of what ended up happening in this premiere. Because I would have thought, and I think you had hinted at it yourself, the initial concept of the show, you're going back through Dexter's early years and building him up to a serial killer and, building him up into the guy that he is. And it's pretty well documented throughout the original show's run exactly what Dexter is, what made him the way that he is, what people influenced him, and what outside influences made him the killer that he is, and yada, yada, yada. And so I was really, really shocked when we just kind of started this and didn't really do anything to sort of not only sell this world to people, but also connect us and endear us to the characters, that for a show that is touting itself as a prequel, it doesn't do really much of anything to get the characters across to the audience. It more or less expects you to know who they are already. And I think it's one of the things that's very much to the show's detriment is I think that it's very much bought into this idea of being a franchise more than it is a show. It's bought very much into the format of being much like typical Dexter, the original run, anyways, and sticking to the formula that worked for several seasons in that show, as opposed to actually making its own identity and really standing out or finding a way to justify why it exists, if that makes sense. The cast, I've got some opinions already. I'm sort of doing my best to try and withhold judgment because it is only one episode. We'll see how it goes past that, but
Yeah.
as far as editing and cinematography, there were a couple things that were kind of neat. There were some other things that really fucking annoyed me, so we'll talk about that. The plot of this episode is stuff that we either knew about already or is a jumbled mess of just things happening for the hell of it. The characters, there's really not much interesting to write off in this episode. There's characters that we knew before, characters that we can recognize because they wear the same costumes as they wore 20 years ago. Or 20 years later, I'm sorry, in the show. And then we are introduced to at least 2 new characters, and of them, I know the name of one of them. The other one is played by Patrick Dempsey, so that should give it away. And then we have the interesting stuff surrounding the meta of why this exists, what people are saying about it, how people are feeling about it. But overall, I'm going to say I tried to go into this optimistically. I say optimistic with the asterisk of, I know that a lot of these projects get kind of screwed up because they are exclusively made for content for streaming platforms. They are made the sole intent of making money. So the end product that we get is usually not very good. Hasn't been very good for the last several years. So I tried to go in open-minded and think that maybe this could be good, but I wasn't really holding out hope, and I don't think I was really shocked or overwhelmed with anything, to say the least. I am thoroughly underwhelmed with what this episode delivered.
I agree. It's very underwhelming, and like when we get into the specifics of like certain aspects that we didn't like, I will say that there were a couple of moments that like visually I found the show to be really great. Which like I rewatched like part of the pilot of Dexter to kind of compare the original show and this, and the original show has a stark opening image where it's basically just Dexter stalking the person that he's going to kill, and it's amazing. Like it's an amazing opening sequence, and it like that pilot episode is leagues better than Original Sin in terms of setting up this world, setting up these characters, and you don't need to completely recreate it, because I would think it would, like I would give it faults if it was lazy. I would call it lazy if they just went and basically remade the opening pilot of Dexter, but when he's younger. But I feel like setting up the world of where he grew up, setting up all that kind of stuff, and of course, the big thing that this episode leads up to is Dexter's first kill. His first kill as the vigilante, like anti-hero, whatever you want to call him, serial killer. And I think I don't know, it's less impactful. Like even rewatching the first episode, just seeing, and maybe it's just down to the performances too. Michael C. Hall being an incredible actor. There is a article that you linked here saying that Michael C. Hall saved this first episode. And I think his narration is one of the better parts, but even then, I at times I was like, oh, I forgot he's the narrator. Like I was like, I didn't necessarily 100% hate that, but
I found he was pulling me out more than anything. It was kind of like that. I wanted to get onto this as soon as we could, just because I thought it was atrocious, and like 4 out of 5 instances it was used, but the licensed music pulled me way the fuck out too.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I put a pin in that for now. The Michael C. Hall narrations I think are fine. For the most part, there were a couple where it's like, oh, he's cutting open a body because he's in pre-med, and he's taking out the heart, and he's looking at it, and then you have the comment. Sure, I'm trying to think of exactly what it is. It's something like, yeah, no heart, just like the Tin Man, and maybe like me. And it's like we just literally 30 seconds ago had a scene of you being like, "Oh, I've got a beating heart. I'm perfectly fine." And it's like, I get what you're going for, but we're getting to like emo teenager levels of everything sucks and I have no heart and yada yada yada. And I'm like, okay.
One of my least favorite and like moments of this episode, and like one of the most on the nose pieces of writing that they did, was when Dexter has to take pictures for like his like graduation photos. So like smile, you like think of something that makes you
Yeah.
smile, and he thinks of the book American Psycho, and it's like, and then he smiles, and I'm like, that is so fucking stupid. Like I was giggling to myself. I'm like, there's no fucking way they thought that was smart.
There
Like that's crazy.
there's a lot of unintentional humor and I think a lot of unintentional cringe in this episode, and I think a lot of it is done because they think it was like it's something that they think is really, really cool and it's super self indulgent and they don't realize it. Um
Hmm.
I think one of the best examples is right at the beginning. They have the hospital that he's in. They pan out, and then there's the emergency sign, and then they have the sign slowly flicker. Some of the letters go out, and it just says "emerge." That was one of those things. Initially, when I saw that, I'm like, okay, well, we're close enough that we're obviously supposed to see that. So I don't really know as though
Hmm.
I'm supposed to give you full points for that because that wasn't super subtle. So I'll give you at least
No.
partial credit. And then they zoom in on it, and I'm like, okay, well, never mind. I guess I'm not doing that anymore.
Well, I
But
also hated like I
go ahead,
sorry.
go ahead.
No, like the beginning and the ending of the episode, they do like this fade out to white, and then they
Oh, it
sort of do these pans where
drives
it's
me
like a pan like
crazy that
shrinking, and
freaking.
it
Mm.
made me feel like I was watching something from 2003. Like I felt like I was watching like something where they're like, oh, see, like the stark open whiteness, like it fits the vibe, and it doesn't. Like it doesn't capture anything to me. It felt like when I first started using editing software when I was like a
Yep.
teenager, like
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that'll look cool. We'll pan out and it'll just be white, and then we'll zoom back in. I'm like, that's so stupid. Like I some of the editing choices, like the match cuts and like the certain like actual like cinematic choices they've used, I thought were pretty interesting,
Hmm.
albeit more on like the technical side, and like, oh, that's cool that you did it. I don't know if it necessarily fit the thematics of the story itself, but like the opening scene, like, yeah, sure, at first, like when they pulled out of the hospital and they show emerge, I was like, okay, that's cool, I guess. And then they did the pan to white, or like the zoom out to white, and like they like it's cool at first, and then you're like, that's really lame, like as they kept doing it, as like I really I I don't know. It I get that the original like Dexter did have some really great like camera work, and like
Hmm.
even New Blood, they definitely tried with New Blood to do like visuals with like text, which we've talked about that before, but like they do a lot of
Yeah.
these insane visuals and shit, but when they don't really need to. Um I'm not gonna say, oh, bad, like good cinematography is a bad thing, but like in that moment, there wasn't really much to really take in. And yeah, like I said, the beginning and the ending of the episode where they like fade to white in like a really strange way, I just wasn't a fan. But that might be nitpicking, but it's something
No,
that
I
did
mean
take me out of the
I'm kind
show.
of in the same boat. I found it really jarring, and I think it. I don't know. I'm kind of again. I'm off put by the premise of this show being what it is. Because what I would have expected them to do is not at all what we're doing, which is just documenting his origins, which I guess for the semantic people, yes, this is technically his origin story, except we've also speed ran our way through several important payoffs that, granted, yes, to a degree, we already know that Harry gets sick, we already know about Nurse Mary being his first kill. There's interesting bits of drama that we can get in here, and that's sort of what I would have assumed the show was going to do. That's how you buy people in. People that are coming back that have already we already know what some of this stuff is. Or even the people that are brand new, which you were talking about earlier. The whole
Hmm.
draw for people is that this is a prequel show. Your opportunity here is to explore the things that we've seen before or know are going to happen and give us more context for those things and explain how it's going to happen, how these things are going to play out, and how they're going to be different. And so, to me, this idea of just almost beat by beat playing through, this is Dexter's first kill. This is how he, what little bits we see of Harry teaching him about the code and yada yada yada. And we even skip over bits of that, which could be potentially interesting. We've skipped
Mhm.
over basically a lot of what could be interesting drama mined from the original show, just to sort of do member berries sprinkled throughout regarding the different plot beats this episode, and it's really kind of distracting more than it is anything else.
Yeah, it was very strange. Like when Harry brings up the code, I was like, because at first I'm like, are they retconning the code? Like, are we getting into when he establishes the code? Because like obviously we know that as people that have seen the original show, like we understand what the code is and when it was established. But like, I don't know, I was that was one thing where I'm like, if they do something different, or if they sort of visually portray like why Dexter would want or why Harry would want to set up the code in the first place. But like he just goes, "Did you do the code?" Or like I don't know, Dexter's like, or like Harry's like, you have to, you have to keep these urges and shit like that. And it would like there's a lot when we get into it, there's a lot that was unbelievable to me in terms of the writing and the performances of these characters. But there were some moments where I was like, Harry deserved a better like setup for like how he's going to be raising his son this way and how he's going to be sort of bring his son into this world. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I don't know. It felt like an underbaked idea.
No, I
Um,
completely agree. This should be, for people that have no idea what this is, this should be a proper introduction to, this is Dexter Morgan. This is basically his origin. You could even go the I guess the Batman's parents die route of just, let's walk you through Laura Moser dying in the storage container in the shipping yard and whatnot, and how the guys chopped her up and yada yada yada. Do all that. Um, you could hypothetically go that route. You could skip over it and even just do the aftermath of she's dead. If you need more
mhm.
context on that, maybe you can get that drip fed to the audience through, for the people that aren't informed, obviously, through Harry's time at the police department, and basically gradually move us through Dexter's early history. And you could maybe do that in an episode, or even do that through your A plot or your first act. That there's different ways that you can do it, but I would have figured we would have taken some time to set this up.
Exactly.
Because even for the people that do know, it is nice to have that little reminder in there, and you don't have to go super over the top with it. I don't expect to have a whole season of things we already know, but at the same time, having a little bit of that either drip fed, or at the same time using that as a way to kind of bring in a new audience and appeal to people that have seen that before. I think seeing Harry's side of it a lot more than we did in the actual show would be interesting. We skipped over it.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's just there like you said before, there was an opportunity for them to kind of do something different with something that we've already seen before. Like and that's one of those things. Like when this was announced, people that defended this move of making these prequel shows, which we haven't talked about this, but there was when they initially announced that they're making more because I remember it was right when Showtime did a merger with Paramount,
Mm-hmm.
and so that Showtime basically would be making content for Paramount, and Paramount was going to be greenlighting a ton of different stuff that was under Showtime. And I mean,
Yep.
Paramount has been making like it's kind of funny. Paramount has been sort of going on a prequel kick recently, especially with horror movies. They made on Paramount Plus Pet Cemetery Bloodlines, which I heard was really bad, and that is basically like a prequel to the Pet Cemetery remake movie that I heard that also wasn't very good. So it's kind of they're just making content for the sake of it. And then
Mm-hmm.
they to one of the most classic horror movies of all time, Rosemary's Baby, they made a prequel. And me as a huge fan of that movie, the prequel is set around a character that we already know. If you've seen the first like 20 minutes of the movie, you know her fate. So it's like I didn't understand the making of it, but that's a whole different conversation. What I'm trying to get at here is like the Paramount Plus and Showtime merger. They announced 3 shows. So they announced a Dexter prequel show, which they called it Young Dexter, a Young Dexter show, which I so wish they would have kept that.
I really
But
wish they could have kept it. Yeah.
and then a Trinity prequel show about the killer. It'd be Obviously, young John Lithgow wouldn't return as Trinity, but it would be like a prequel about him,
I think they
and
should
then
throw him in a wig and have him play his teenage self. That'd be fucking hilarious. Just do it.
I will say I love the commitment to Dexter still having the long hair and having like the really shitty wig on the character on the actor. That was one of those things I was like, he kind of had to do it
Yeah.
for the continuity's sake. So, but and
Well,
then
it's
they
funny you
announced,
bring that up. We'll have to talk about that in a minute.
yeah, and then they announced Dexter Resurrections, which should we just start with
We
the
probably
opening
should.
of the opening of the
I
episode?
have some
Okay.
brief notes of that are kind of chronological for the beginning, and then about the midsection, I'm like, there's no point. There's
Yeah,
not much to say. This episode doesn't really go anywhere.
no. Well,
Um,
so like the opening of the episode, basically, Dexter obviously if you've seen the ending of Dexter New Blood, Harrison shoots Dexter in the heart,
yes. So Dexter
and
Morgan is dead.
you're like, oh shit, okay, well, I thought him being a lumberjack was the worst ending we could have gotten, but of course, he gets shot in the heart, and in this show, he somehow lived. They resuscitate him back to life. Um, and this show is being set up like his life flashing before his eyes. And it's kind of funny because I think about a week ago, they released a teaser that was basically this opening scene.
Yep.
It was a little bit more like, is Dexter alive? Like, it's one of those things, like, if you actually are paying attention, and like, I kind of expected from a show called Dexter Resurrection,
I don't know why
or
you would
Dexter
even
Resur
bait it. I would
Yeah,
think by
right.
the virtue of the fact that it's coming back, like if you exclusively did this, that's one thing. When you have another show in the works, like you said, titled Resurrection, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna guess he lives. But then
Hmm.
to release a teaser and potentially tease the fact that maybe he's still dead at the
Hmm.
same time, it's like the intro of your show confirms he's alive. I don't know why. Like, it's not a season reveal that he's alive. It's not some
No,
grandiose twist. It's the opening 3 minutes of your show.
exactly. And like, I didn't understand releasing the teaser a week before the first episode of Original Sin came out, because I feel like you and I would have more of a like reaction, because we've been processing the rumors of Dexter being alive for like the past, since Michael C. Hall hinted at it at Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
We both have been talking about how stupid of an idea it is, and how like they're retroactively probably going to ruin, even though New Blood was terrible, they're probably going to make an even worse decision. Depending on where they go with it, they could miraculously save it, but I doubt it. But um, but with the opening of this show, they're basically, and I don't know if this is just me, but when I was watching it, they're like, you know, this, I think they said this summer, so in summer 2025, we'll have to do coverage of Dexter Resurrection. But they're like, coming 2025, see where Dexter comes next. So, it was weird. It was like, watch right now where Dexter came from, and then now, and the next summer, see
Yeah,
where he came from next. And it's like,
see where he
fuck
goes
you.
next. It's like, how about, can you guys just not do this, please?
No, it felt like when like you'd get like those buffer spots in between like kids TV shows where they're like,
Yeah, it,
check out the movie next, like,
it was really
that's
awkward because it popped up and it was like, do you want to skip the intro? And I'm like, wait, why is this considered the intro? And then I just watched it and I'm like, this is just a fucking ad. And then I realized it
yeah,
was for Dexter and I'm like, oh my god, fuck off.
which like Paramount Plus, probably the shittiest streaming service, like one of them at least. Like, it's not one of my, like, I mean, I don't like streaming services to begin with, but like it doesn't run very well. And I could go on a whole rant about it, but and like they have ads for their own movies, even if you
Yeah,
pay
it's a
for
little
no ads.
self-indulgence holding a fucking TV show for self-indulgence.
Well, because after Dexter, we watched something else. I forget what we watched, but we had to watch a 30-minute teaser trailer for the Transformers movie that was on there, and I'm like, bro, I don't give a fuck. Let me skip this. Like, at least HBO lets you skip it. Like, I like like HBO's like, oh, watch the Penguin. I'm like, oh, I actually might. Okay, I'll watch this. But it's like Paramount doesn't have anything. They're like, watch the new SpongeBob special, and I'm like, bro, I'm watching Dexter.
On a
Please
separate
don't.
note, actually, you saying that Penguin fucking goated. Go watch that if you haven't.
Yeah, I
Do
haven't
not
seen it.
watch this.
I haven't seen Penguin, but I've heard great things about it, so I'll have to watch it. I
So,
hear it's a great example of
oh
being
yeah,
a prequel.
Penguin is fucking fantastic. Yeah. So I going back to the intro. So Dexter is alive. So I think we kind of need to unpack the ramifications of that, which you and I had talked
Yeah.
about with the announcement of the teaser, the possibility that he was alive. It's already not a good thing because again, it undoes so much. Um, so just off the bat, if Dexter survives, then obviously Harrison didn't kill him, which means Harrison is running from nothing at the end of New Blood.
Yeah.
Because Angela took the fall for killing him, except if he didn't die, she's not taking the fall for killing him, she's taking the fall for wounding him, and he was unarmed in the scenario where she wounded him. And if she
Yeah.
took the fall for wounding him, then the problem then becomes she takes the fall for wounding him, how did she stage the scene to get away with shooting him? Because it was a family-owned rifle that was used to shoot him. It would not match a service weapon. He wouldn't have been able to actually stage the scene. So I would assume Angela would probably be arrested.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then the other thing is, so as far as Harrison's story, you don't actually absolve him of anything. He shot his father and he survived, so that problem in that plot line is still going. Um, I just like New Blood's already like monumentally bad. It does so much damage to different characters. I don't know why you felt the need to bring us back to that fucking horrific ending and shovel
Yeah.
on more shit to it and make it worse.
Well, because we've talked about this before, because like with the announcement of those three shows, which it seems like the Trinity show is probably never going to come out, especially if this show gets as bad of a rap as this first episode did. Like if the rest of if the rest of this season is as like poorly received as this first episode, I doubt the Trinity TV show will even be like continued in production. They never talked about it at Comic-Con, so I'm assuming they're just silently canceling the plans.
I would have to assume so.
Yeah, but with Dexter Resurrection, because I remember they announced a Dexter sequel show. It wasn't at the time, there was no title for it. Um, and so obviously with the Dexter prequel, you already know like what they're gonna at least attempt to do, or at least I guess we thought we knew. Um, and then with Dexter or Dexter the sequel show, most people called it the Harrison spinoff because
Yep.
of course like Dexter's dead, so who are we gonna follow, you know?
Yep.
But they said Michael C. Hall was returning, so I'm like, there's two options. He somehow comes back to life, which we thought was the worst of the two. Because the other thing that they could have done is Dexter or Harrison does continue Dexter's legacy like years on, and Dexter becomes his dark passenger. But that would also retcon what they do in New Blood, where he's like, "I'm not like you, Dad. I don't have a dark passenger," and so it's like, I don't know. Uh, there were two possible outcomes, both
Both
carrying a
are
lot of baggage,
incredibly
but
bad. They oh
this,
yeah, for sure
yeah,
have baggage too. It's insane. And again, like I
well,
don't
yeah. Like,
New Blood's really bad. Stay away from it. You don't need to tie yourself to that show. Just pretend you're a prequel,
just
start us with a day in the life, move on, explain it from there. We don't like just ignore that piece of garbage for right now. We'll be fine.
yeah,
Um
because already them being like, "Oh, here's New Blood," I'm like, God, you
oh,
know, like, ew,
I guess
please don't remind me.
I'll bring this up now. So, how do you feel about because I know exclusively how I feel about this. I'm really not a fan of this. But so Dexter's in the car, he's bleeding out, but not really, because he gets to the hospital like 20 seconds later. It's fine, trust me, even though he was dead in the snow. Um,
Yep.
While that's happening, they pan to the window that Dexter is facing, and then they play Dexter telling Harrison where to shoot, which that's the other funny part of retconning the fact that Dexter's alive is the idea that he told Harrison where to shoot him. Harrison still fucked it up. Um,
Mhm.
so
Jesus, so bad.
so we replay Dexter telling Harrison where to shoot him. Harrison shoots him, and then that's it. How do you feel about replaying that in the car in that moment?
Uh, um, that was probably the funniest like part of one of the most unintentionally funniest part of the whole episode, even though it's technically like a teaser at Resurrection. But like I feel like if you've seen the other shows, like they don't have to fucking remind you that he got shot. He's holding a fucking bullet wound. Like he's bleeding out from a bullet wound. It's like most people that are watching the sequel show have seen New Blood. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I've always
So
hated when movies do that. Like sorry, I don't mean to
no,
cut
no,
you
go
off,
ahead.
but like
Go ahead.
the like it pisses me off in movies like when you hear like a piece of dialogue be like, unless it's done in a tasteful way and it's done in like a way where like it actually is impactful and like it's, you know, it's meant to turn a certain phrase or a certain moment like away from the audience. But like when you're watching a movie, like I forget what I watched recently that did it, but like something happens in the beginning of the movie. 30 minutes later, they remind you of what happened 30 minutes ago. It's like, bro, I'm not a fucking idiot. Like, I
Hmm.
hate when movies do that, but when a TV show does that, where this is supposed to be prestige television, which it's funny that they're even calling it that, but like, it's supposed to be prestige television, and it's like a show like Breaking Bad would never do that. Which obviously Breaking Bad's like the bar or whatever.
Hmm.
I mean, I guess maybe they've done that.
I don't
I don't
believe they
remember,
do
but like,
actually.
it's like but it's like if spoilers for Breaking Bad. It's like if actually no, I'll say Todd killing somebody. It's like if they replayed that in El Camino. It's like you know what I
Yeah.
mean. Like El Camino is a great example where it's like it's a sequel show where it's like you don't need to be reminded of everything that Jesse went through in the last season of Breaking Bad. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like that's it's very insulting to the audience. And like I get people are gonna say it's nitpicking, but like and the way they edited it, like they did that scene, they basically just like they cropped the image onto like shitly onto the fucking window, and it's that is like unless he's genuinely viewing the site of the crime and he's looking at what happened, like the site of the shot of the shooting and everything. Like if he's looking at like the bloodied like snow and everything, then I guess I would understand that. But it really felt like poorly like placed together. It was so shitty.
I think it's the worst of every world because it looks really bad. And
Mhm.
you have your other angle of this, which is what you were saying. For the people that have actually watched New Blood, we know what happened. For the people that have not watched New Blood, there is not really any information that can be gleaned from random young kid shoots Dexter in the chest.
Yeah.
Um, for the people that are currently watching this, again, like you said, Dexter currently is dying from a gunshot wound to the chest, so we know exactly what happened. Again, we're not really gleaning anything new from showing you that. At the same time, I think it's the condescending writers thing of well, the audience might be too stupid to remember that Dexter got shot, so let's show him being shot. I also think it's meant to be the helpful thing that I was talking about earlier, which is you want to try and get your new audience members to understand what's happening and why. But again, you're not conveying new information and you're not really getting across what happened. You would actually have been better doing probably the smarter thing at this point, which is replay the ending of New Blood, show Angela loading him into the car, picking him up, trying to save his life, whatever. Because then you can
Mhm.
actually add new information to that scene. You can show us why Angela saved him, why she did what she's doing, heaven forbid, how she's going to actually get out of this situation and absolve Harrison of legal guilt and culpability. Um, Literally anything would have been better than this because it's more information for the audience to understand. And I think the better thing with going back and adding context to that ending is yes, you're doing exactly what I advised you not to do, which you're attaching yourself to the ending of the show, but that's kind of running with the premise that you have to do this anyways. Um,
Hmm.
the easier thing to do is actually to explain the mindset of these characters, what they're doing, why they're doing it. But you can also kind of put us into that position where audience members will know and understand what's happening. Returning audience members will understand. New audience members will kind of get a good feel of what's happening. If they have questions, they can check out New Blood and figure it out from there. And
Hmm.
at the same time, you're segueing into what the overall point of doing this is, which is Dexter's life is flashing before his eyes, which is really weird
Yeah.
considering it starts with his birth and then 20 years after, 23 years after, and then just going to pick up with, one of the articles I have uh, set aside here, if we want to look at it, says that there are going to be two different timelines that the show is looking at, so that'll be interesting. But really weird that he would have
Oh,
settled on two
okay.
different points in time while his life of 40 to 50 years is flashing before his eyes. But what do I know?
Well, yeah, and also it's not like when you die, your brain like gives you like play by play like
Well, not
like I
not
get
even
that
just
this is
that.
obviously
He
nitpicking too,
gets
but
he
like
gets specific shots and memories of people that were like he would never have access to this information,
yeah.
which is why it gets really awkward framing the show as his life is flashing before his eyes, therefore he's remembering things like Deb's volleyball game that he was not there for, or the death of Harry Morgan
Yeah.
Jr., who he had no idea existed and never acknowledged.
Well, because like I have a theory about that. Because like I was thinking about that as the show was going on. I have a theory that the Dexter sequel show wasn't gonna have originally gonna have Michael C. Hall returning as Dexter. Like I think they were gonna do a Harrison spinoff, but then obviously with the like Dexter's always been popular, but recently in the past couple of years we've talked about
Mm-hmm.
this before, but like
Oh
it
yeah.
had a resurgence online. Like a ton of people have been watching more Dexter, and people have obviously fallen in love again with Michael C. Hall as Dexter. I think the people that wrote and like made Original Sin. This is a theory. Like obviously, I have no facts to prove this. I'm just basing this off of like how poorly put together. This could have just been poorly put together, and I'm trying to come up with a reason why it was. But I feel like this opening scene was tacked on. Like it feels tacked on to me. Like it feels like the people that made Original Sin wanted to start by recreating the original intro and all that kind of stuff. It seems like they wanted to go that route, and they're like, actually, this is his life flashing before his eyes, rather than just a moment in time of Dexter's life and like the beginnings of him at the Miami Metro. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
like like tacking this on. You're right. It's like there are certain things that Dexter would have no idea. Like maybe in his mind he would fill in the blanks of, oh, I missed her game and she was mad at me, and so I guess visually in his mind he would see that, but that's
Mm-hmm.
not a memory. Like a memory is like the a memory is like seeing like let's say as a kid you saw someone get run over. It's like of course you're going to see the person getting run over. You're not going to see the inside of the car of the guy drinking. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like there's certain perspectives that you wouldn't see, and so I think that's the flaw. I don't like sure this could have just been poorly planned, and I'm not going to put it past Showtime, but I do think that the producers had changed their their minds and were like, shit, we have to bring Dexter back. So what if this is just his life flashing before his eyes, and the writers are like, fuck, okay, I guess we're gonna do that.
Yeah, the only
I don't know. I'm
counterpoint
trying to piece it together, but
the only counterpoint I would have to that, I think, is Clyde Phillips is directly involved. I believe he wrote the first episode or as acting showrunner. I'd have to double check to be 100% sure. Take that with a grain of salt.
okay.
But I do know he's involved. One of the articles is him talking about the major death in this episode and why it had to be done this way. So, as far as I'm aware, he's directly involved. He had a hand in the first four seasons of Dexter, and then he was also heavily involved in New Blood. And I think it's funny looking at this and looking at it was Christian Link with Arcane. A lot of people credited
Mm-hmm.
him with season one being as good as it is, and then
Mm-hmm.
it kind of looks to me that Christian Link took a lot of the blame for season two being as bad as it is because He's been directly involved in a
Yeah.
lot of the decisions. He cut out certain people. They downsized the writers' room to 3 people, yada yada yada. So season 2 being a unmitigated disaster for Arcane in several respects, as far as character payoffs and plot and whatnot. I think it's kind of the same thing here. That I think Clyde Phillips got a little too much credit for being sort of the saving grace of the first 4 seasons. And then I think that was why they brought him back for New Blood, or at least partially. And then New
Yeah.
Blood was such a disaster that for whatever reason, he's just continuing to fail upwards, and it's continuing to get him work, I guess. So I guess good for him, but at the same time,
Mhm.
like I don't know. He's got some interesting ideas as far as this character in the show. So I'm hoping we can talk about that later, maybe. But
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I'm saying, like I'm not, I'm just saying it felt tacked on. I'm not gonna put it, like I said, I'm not
no,
gonna
no,
put it past
I
the writers.
completely
And
I get what you're saying.
well, I remember when New Blood, because like I watched the whole thing of Dexter like I think 2 years before New Blood came out, and I remember coming up with so many ideas of what they could do as like a mini series or a movie or whatever to kind of cap off. It was kind of funny because I was watching Dexter and Breaking Bad at the same time, and I saw how Breaking Bad sort of used the spinoff movie as a way to like expand, but also give resolution. Obviously, the Jesse story, but like I remember when they announced New Blood, they're like the original writers are back, and I remember being like, oh, okay, yeah, it was just the bad writers of the last like 3 seasons. That's why it was poorly done. But or last, I mean, not even 3 seasons. You get what I mean? Like the last like
Mm-hmm.
season 5 to season 8, and then obviously New Blood ended up becoming what it was, and um, like it wasn't just Clyde Phillips; it was like a bunch of other people too writing it. But and he wrote. It's strange because like you were saying, you gave a great example. I haven't seen Arcane, but I've heard a lot about it. I've heard the
Season
first
1 is
season's
fucking fantastic.
great.
Season 2 is dog shit. Don't watch it.
Yeah, yeah. I heard the second season was bad, and like it's kind of funny because it's like I forget who exactly said this, but it was a director. They're like, when you direct a great movie or a great episode or whatever, you're given all the credit. When in fact it's like a group effort,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. But then when you make a bad movie, again, the blame is equally put on you. So it's like there's no shielding yourself, which obviously, like, sure, if you made something bad, you made something bad, it's going to happen. You're going to get blamed for it. But at the same time, it's like with TV shows, there are so many people, there's so many cooks in the kitchen, and obviously there's
Mm-hmm.
producers too. That doesn't excuse it from being bad, but there's like I'm not like when I hear Clyde Phillips is back writing it, obviously with the context of New Blood being what it was, I'm not as excited as I once was. At the same time, it's like maybe like you were saying, there could be ideas that they set up that could be good, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. So the
All right, do you
next,
want to get into the rest of it?
sure. What do you want to start with?
All right. Damn, I just watched this episode and I'm trying to remember. The let's talk about the open. Let's I kind of hinted at it earlier. The recreation of the classic Dexter intro. What do you think of that? What do you think? Do you think it was?
um, so I'll be honest. I have mixed feelings on this even because I think it's neat to recreate it.
Mhm.
I also think
Yeah,
most shows fall into the pitfall that their opening themes are way too long. They're way too self-indulgent. Again, they're way too drawn out. It's one of those things that you have, especially with TV, is such a limited format as far as the amount of time that you're actually given to divulge information effectively to the audience. I say that knowing that
yeah,
this is a 49-minute episode in which not much happens that we didn't already know about. I was
yeah,
kind of disappointed by how much of, like, probably by about the 10-second mark, I'm like, okay, how long is this going to keep going for? Because,
yeah,
again, it's neat to see it, but I've always preferred, like, The Blacklist or Breaking Bad, where it's like a 5 to maybe 10-second intro. And you've got names
yeah.
panning
And Better
throughout,
Call
but we're
Saul too.
immediately, right. But we're immediately getting
Mhm.
into what the meat of the episode. We're talking about characters and what they're doing. We're setting up plot lines. We're talking about the different drama of the week, the case of the week. We're introducing whatever. But we've actually hit the ground
Mhm.
running pretty quickly. We've moved past a lot of the meta of the episode. Whereas, like to this again, it was neat to see it, but it did feel like it was running a little too long. And maybe that's just me as an aspiring TV writer. I would like the idea of having a very quick theme and being able to run right into the episode and just hit the ground running. But again,
Yeah.
it was just it took me out of it a little bit. That probably by the 10-second mark, I was like, I we please just carry on. Done with this.
Yeah, because I don't know. To me, I I guess my expectations were that they were going to do something new because obviously this is a younger Dexter. Like, but no, they kind of just do a play by play of the original format of the original intro. They use the same music. They even carry over the same music from the ending of New Blood. Like I don't remember it. Like the end credit music of New Blood.
I don't
It's the same
actually.
score. Yeah, it's like well, I mean, they use it for the original run of Dexter, but it's like the same score as New Blood. It's like the
Hmm.
it's like very
Do
it's very
do do do. Yeah, that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like it's not bad, but
No,
because
no.
I have PTSD from watching New Blood, that
God.
like it triggers me, and and I mean I love the opening music. I think the opening music for Dexter, like it always gets caught in my head. Like I love it. It's really catchy.
Hmm.
But I do agree that they did like it's cool, but it's the definition of using the skip intro button. Like it's the definition of
Yeah.
I just want to get to the meat of here.
I
Like
I don't even know if I told you. I usually do. I do that with most shows. I did it with Mad Men. I did it with Breaking Bad and whatnot. It's kind of hard too. It's like a 3-second intro, but you get my point. Like,
yeah, no, I
if
I
I
get
can
it.
skip an intro and just carry on with the episode, I probably will. And it's not like I don't mean any disrespect to the show. I will probably I did it with Dexter. I did it with really any TV show I've watched. I will watch the credits at least once a season just to see what
Mhm.
changes. If I know that there are credit changes, I will look at it. If a major character dies, I will watch the credits just to figure out what's changed, what's different, just to see what's happening. But one of those things, once
Mhm.
I've seen it once, I really don't have any interest in seeing it again.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, like New Blood has pretty good intro. It just says Dexter New Blood, and then it has the title. And I think that was what was refreshing at first about Dexter New Blood is you're like, oh, okay, there's no, this is separating itself a little bit. It's not
yeah.
trying to fully recreate the tone and the feel. It's set in a different location. That was sort of the potential, and like that's like maybe the only plus that I can give. Like if I had to give pity points to New Blood, there you go. There's one little pity point, but with Original Sin, I don't know. To me, like you said before, it had to kind of win me over, and for the intro to be sort of just beat by beat, I thought it was kind of lazy, and I thought like because like okay, if they did something different where he does a different routine or whatever,
Hmm.
like I feel like that could have been interesting, and like them showing Harry and showing Deb, I thought was cool,
Hmm.
but I don't know, I don't know if I remember. I can't. I'll have to rewatch the actual original like um intro like the intro of the original run of Dexter, but there's a bite sound effect when Dexter bites toast.
Yeah, it's
It sounded just like a
so
Scooby
fucking
Doo like
weird.
cartoon bite. Like, and I don't remember if that's in the original show, but it took me out. Like
Yeah.
like he goes, "Ow," and I'm like, that sounds like Scooby Doo. Like it sounded like ridiculous. And I was texting my friend Michael, who's also a Dexter
Hmm.
again, not Dexter fan, but like we both are too deep to to not like talk about this. And he said he was gonna watch it soon. But I was just updating him, like live, giving him a live feed of of my thoughts on the episode. But
God.
yeah, I just thought it was lazy, in my opinion. Like I'm not like I'm not super strong opinion on it. Like I don't really care. Like it's just an intro, like whatever. But it to me was one of those little sparking things where I'm like, you're trying to capture it. It's basically the same thing, so I can't really hate on it for being like, oh, it shits on the original thing. It's like it's the same
Hmm.
music, it's the same whatever. But I don't know. It was fine. It was whatever.
I think it's almost the perfect analogy for what Original Sin is. It's a very hollow recreation of a thing that came before. There's not really any substance or difference to it other than the fact that it is hollow. There's really not
Yeah.
much to take out of it. There's not much about it that's different. The characters are younger, and that's about it. And they vaguely resemble the people that came before. That and I've heard this repeatedly, that Original Sin episode 1 kind of acts more like a parody or an SNL skit than anything. I think I'd actually agree
That's
with that,
honestly what I thought too.
because
Yeah.
it's kind of jarring, because you have characters like, I think Molly Brown does an okay enough job as Deb for this episode, but I'm not.
Hmm.
She's one of the people that, again, I'm like, her, Angel, Masuka, I'm not 100% bought in on them. I'm not really bought in on, like you said earlier, I'm not really bought in on any of them, I think, except for Christian Slater's Harry, and even then, it's hard for me to kind of separate Christian Slater versus regular Harry.
Hmm.
Um, or I'm sorry, hard for me to, um, you get what I'm trying to say. Christ, words are failing me.
I get what you're saying.
Um,
No, you're good.
that's just it is. It feels very, very hollow, and that's, I think, kind of the
Hmm.
resounding question a lot of people have, even journalists and publications are having with this, is what exactly are we getting at here? And I think it's one of the biggest problems this show has, is it's an identity crisis that's brought about by a network that wants to make money. But it's also brought about by an IP that's refusing to die after having killed its protagonist twice. And it's
Yeah.
also from an IP that, yeah, granted, it's incredibly popular, but at the same time, you're still running into all these kinds of problems as far as there's. I mean, even looking at what we have here, it's just. It is. It's incredibly valid. Fucking hell, shallow and vapid. That it's not really doing much of anything. It's not accomplishing much of anything. And I think the opening credits being a recreation in that sense, it almost does kind of. I think it is a perfect allegory for what this show seems to be. It's a very vacuous recreation of a thing that came before, with the same kind of style, but it's not the same flair.
Hmm. Yeah. It's not. I guess the reason why Dexter is like attractive to audiences is because of how fresh it is. Like it takes on sort of like in the same vein as like I think it's a little better than like shows like Criminal Minds and like NCIS, but it's like a lot of people love those shows because I mean you're focusing on a single group of people and it's these main characters and they're all basically they're good guys and they stop bad guys and it's like a lot of people really like that. But what Dexter kind of takes that formula and focuses it on one person and it's this person sort of being on the ins and the outs of both of like the good and the bad. And so that's why it was so refreshing. And of course, like I talked about before, I don't want to keep reiterating this, but like the original pilot does throw you straight into what he's doing. Like it doesn't really like
Mm-hmm.
obviously he has narration where he has to kind of describe who he is, but he more or less describes his backdrop about who he truly is. And it works really well. But I don't necessarily think excuse me that yeah, Original Sin, it feels, you're right, it feels hollow and I don't know, it it was one of those little aspects that disappointed me, even if it's a nitpick. But
Yeah, I don't know.
all right, where else are we getting? There's not much to talk about with this episode.
Not really. I have some general plot notes, and I want to get to those in a minute. But this was something that I had thought immediately after watching it the first time, because I watched it twice for this. Um, I, I really do think this show is kind of a slave to typical TV format, and I want to explain what I mean by that. So I brought up the Blacklist earlier. That was one of the first examples that came to mind. Buffy and Angel I thought about too. A lot of shows, especially probably 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even older, a lot of them had a typical formula. You'd have your different stories running concurrently, you'd have all that, whatever. You would also have, like, Blacklist is a case of the week. You'd have a different criminal that the team is chasing down. You brought up Criminal Minds and stuff like that. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Excuse me. With Dexter, it was always the kill of the week. Who is he going to get on his table? Who's he going to kill? Who is he going to send out into the bay this time? And I think the longer Dexter went on, the more the novelty of the kills started to sort of wear off. The more it was kind of just going through the motions. You were killing people because it was the thing that he did, as opposed to really justifying the need within the story and more or less just, again, doing it for the hell of it. I think that's part of the problem here, and that's why I'm kind of concerned about the first kill in the show being this early. is I already can
Yeah.
see us going down the path of very quickly having Dexter become a serial killer and very quickly pile up the amount of bodies he's leaving in his wake. I, again, going back to what I would have assumed the original intent of the show is, I don't know why you would necessarily want to dive headfirst into that, as opposed to taking your time and slowly building up the drama. But I guess we'll see. There are 9 episodes left after this, so
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like the first. I think his first kill being in the first episode, I think could have worked as sort of like a parallel where, like, let's say it's his first kill and he's very much like a rookie at this. You know what I mean? He's not like it's very strange because he's like, yeah, I disposed the body. I'm amazing at all of this, and it's like I feel like seeing him fumble, seeing him almost barely get away. I think would have been more of a effective. Maybe this is what they're leading up to in the show because like there's a weird piece of dialogue where Michael C. Hall is the narrator. He goes like, I kept her earrings as a trophy, but that would be my detriment, or it's something like
yeah.
that. And
He,
he holds on to
yeah.
it.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm starting to wonder if that will come to bite him in the ass later on in the series, or in the season, which I'm kind of assuming that's what they're
Mm-hmm.
alluding to. Which that I find more interesting but at the same time, it's also like that's like in the original run, like Dokes finds something that links
Yep.
Dexter to the crime. It's nothing original. I just think if Dexter would have like fucked up really bad, and like and then him learning certain things, like him like automatically knowing how to saran wrap her to the table and all this type of shit. Like I think him or at least seeing Harry teach him would have been a far more effective way. And then him doing it on his own when Harry's obviously sick in the hospital. It's like him like coming into his own, making mistakes, but learning to clean them up. I think is a way better way to capture him in his youth, him in like the first time. Because I don't know, to me it like whenever you see a character like, oh, this is their first time, they usually fuck up. Like they usually in most movies it's like, oh, this person that's skilled, they usually mess up one or two. Not no one's going to be perfect on the first shot, but this character of course is supposed to be set up like, oh, he's an amazing, like he's perfect. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a prevailing theory right now, as far as I'm aware, and this is one I buy into, which is that line is incredibly deliberate for exactly what you're saying, that he will get caught or come close to it because of the earrings. Um, and that's going to be like the big point of drama, but um, I guess from what I was reading, that's also him taking the earrings is technically a retcon of one of the webisodes, I guess, that detailed his first trophy. So
Mm-hmm.
people are wondering if they're aware of that, and basically the whole thing that they're trying to do is he takes the earrings almost get him caught, and so he stops taking trophies until he takes the first one that's in the webisode. I have no idea. Um, that was just something that I had heard, and I think it's interesting, but I have no idea. I don't have any
Yeah.
stake or claim in the webisodes really at all, so I can't really speak to it. But
It was to me. That was the only kind of one of the more like only interesting decisions they've made
mm-hmm.
for this episode. Another one that I liked was they kind of changed. Obviously, like you said, like with the kills in the original show, you sort of be like, okay, it's basically all the same. Like he saran wraps them, and then he tells them what they've done. He stabs them in the heart, then he cuts them up, and then he puts them in the bay. It's like when the first couple times you see it, you're like, oh shit, this guy's like ruthless. But then in Original Sin, I kind of like that he throws it into the alligator pen. Like I thought that was a cool like visual wise, and I thought it was an interesting like change of pace. You know what I mean? Like I thought that was like one of the only kind of things that I could see is like, oh, that's a good idea, but it was also it could be a detrimental mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like it's nothing amazing, but that's like maybe one of the only things I thought were kind of an interesting little twist that they did. And it's not really that much of a twist, but he still throws them in the water. But
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. What what I think frustrates me, and I think you're dead on with the idea that I would have wanted to see more of building up to the first kill. I would say
Mhm.
even personally, if I was doing this, I'd take the first few episodes and actually build up to it being like a big event. Um, is this idea that it kind of removes culpability from the writers of having to actually go through the motions of establishing a day in the life, of actually going through and dictating what these characters should and shouldn't do, trying to figure out exactly how they interact with each other, how they've influenced Dexter, how Dexter was influenced by his past. I think that's the thing, is once you really start to, and the more I'm thinking about it now, I'm kind of realizing this, the more you start to really go into the day of the life, the more you have to explain to an average audience member, I think. And at that point, I think the writers lose control over whatever they're trying to do in 10 episodes. I don't think 10 episodes for whatever they're trying to do is enough to accomplish it. Because again, a
Mhm.
lot of people, as far as I'm gathering, felt sort of alienated by the fact that it kind of starts in the middle of nowhere. But it also, at the same time, removes character opportunities to actually get into the formation of the code, why and how he ends up choosing his victims, why his father, who's a cop, is perfectly okay with this, how his father knows that he's basically destined to be a killer, yada, yada, yada. There's some
Mm.
interesting opportunities to explore the other side of that we've already seen in the main show. And again, it's you missed the opportunity, but you did it more or less because you have other things you want to worry about. You're relying on us to fill in the blanks or do the homework ourselves. But I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
not 100% sold in. It's a spinoff. I agree to a degree that people should have seen the original property before, but you have to acknowledge that even with a spinoff, especially with a prequel of all things, your goal is to set up what came before. Your goal is also to eventually lead into successfully what comes after. So you need
Exactly.
to really lay the groundwork. And as of right now, I'm not convinced that we're heading in a positive direction, considering we have. I talked to you about this vaguely, I think, or maybe it was Cam. I can't remember, but the idea that we have multiple characters like Masuka and Angel that are literally just dressed in the same costumes as they are
Mhm.
20 years later, 15 years later. Not really a great sign to me, considering that, I mean, obviously, 15 years is a pretty substantial gap of time. The idea that people wouldn't change at all, they wouldn't become different people, they wouldn't develop different personalities, they wouldn't go through different life events or anything, nothing dramatic would happen to really change who they are. It just really took me off guard, especially when we
Yeah.
get to see them later in Miami Metro again. But sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, I know.
No, yeah, no. I mean, if you want to get to, I mean, one of the more frustrating, I think the most frustrating portrayal for this season, this episode, if you want to get into it, is Masuka. I think he's a caricature of himself. Uh, it,
I would
I
agree.
think the people, because it's Masuka did make it. He made inappropriate jokes. Obviously, I was like a part of his character, but that wasn't just what he did. I think a majority of the time that this guy talks as Masuka is him making a sex joke. He's also like borderline harassing people in public. Like he's like, "Come on, lady, you want to see my 9-inch nail?" And it's like,
Yeah,
and he takes pictures of them, and it's like Masuka was a little creepy, but he wasn't that creepy. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't
yep.
like that outrageous. And also like he goes, and it's like he only did that when he would make inappropriate jokes. He doesn't do that every time he fucking talks. Like there are certain mannerisms that I feel like they didn't get right. And like and you could say it's a nitpick, but that's how the character is, like in
No,
the
I
original show. Like
completely agree. It's overdone, and I think one of the funnier continuity mistakes I noticed was at the job fair when he first meets Masuka and he starts looking at the photographs. Right before that, you have Masuka laugh, and that's what gets Dexter to turn around. And when they cut to the actor, he's not laughing. You can clearly tell.
Yeah, it's like a they dubbed it in.
I kind of got at it before, and I think we've both sort of been saying this, but it really does feel like a kind of paint by numbers, draw Dexter, or write a script of Dexter from memory and just tell me what you want me to do. And I know the way that I described a lot of the set costumes to Cam when I was first telling him about the show was, I don't know if you've seen this. There are people that will do this with their kids. They will get um, really, really detailed Halloween costumes. They'll either make them, hand make them, whatever, or buy
Hmm.
them. And they will dress their kids up, and it's like, oh, my kid's gonna be season 5 Rick Grimes. They'll get the jacket, they'll get the shirt, the exact clothing. They'll detail it the same way. They'll go over the top to the point that it literally does just look like that actor, but as a child. And that
Yeah.
kind of feels almost verbatim like what we're doing here. That these are people that look vaguely similar to a lot of these characters. They act vaguely similar, but it's jarring enough that you can kind of acknowledge that they're not them. And it's kind of the worst
Hmm.
kind of uncanny, I think, that like I think Molly Brown has some of Deb's mannerisms and she's got some of the dialogue down, but again, not 100% convinced, but even then it's that
No.
idea that because we know she's basically imitating a character that came after or came before technically.
Yeah.
Um I don't
Hmm.
know, it's really jarring to see it because there's not enough association with these new characters, these new
Hmm.
versions of these characters for me to tie each person to their future self, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, no, I totally agree. Like Batista,
Mm-hmm.
he looks like him. Like I thought that was like his son or something. Like I looked it up. I was like, is this his son? Like, because like they've done that before in
Mm-hmm.
like biopic movies, like the movie about Ice Cube, like in his rap group, like his son played him in the younger as his younger version, and he's a good actor too, which is like a benefit too. His son was a good actor, but like
Mm-hmm.
he looks just like him for the most part. I mean, obviously it's his kid, that makes sense, but like um so I was like looking it up, and I don't think they're related, but he looks just like him. Like they did a great job in terms of the casting of like him looking a lot like Batista. Batista doesn't open his mouth that much. He goes, "Hey Sarge, how's it going?" And I think that's like
Mm-hmm.
pretty much it. Like he barely talks, and when he talks, he doesn't have the bravado. He doesn't have the like I don't know. I was expecting with Batista, he always had such a great personality to him that I was like a young Batista would be like fearless. He would be like really interesting to watch. And we didn't really get a chance to look at Batista. I'm hoping like when they actually delve into him, if they even do, that we get a better look at who he is. But I agree. It seemed like with his character, it was look, it's Batista, and that was it. Like doesn't really talk. He doesn't really become a
Mm-hmm.
character in this episode, so it's hard to fully grade him. I think Masuka is the only like returning character that I can really like pick apart because his performance I thought was pretty bad. Like and like I like he looks a lot like him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. You found a guy that looks like him, but he like just straight up is like to me not the best. Wasn't the best representation. And I think Deb, there were kernels of her being like a pretty decent portrayal
Mm-hmm.
of Deb. I think there were moments where I was like, okay, I could see it. You know what I mean? I was
Mm-hmm.
like there were moments that I really liked. But there were so many times where they were forcing her to swear because obviously Deb has a
Yep.
sailor mouth in the original show, and that's what makes her charming. Like a lot of people find her really charming, obviously because people are like, oh my god, she swears so much, and like everybody's sort of in on it. But it never really felt that forced when when the original Deb played, you know what I mean? And so there were moments, and like obviously Harry, there's that dialogue exchange where Harry's like, Deborah, language. Like, why do you have to swear so much? And it's like, okay, like I get that they had to acknowledge that. I think that the idea of that exchange was good. I don't necessarily think it was a great exchange, but like I said, like I think there are moments where I like Deb. Like I do agree with you. There's moments I like, but at the same time, like I don't know. But how about we talk about Dexter himself, like the uh, Patrick Gibson? Think about his portrayal of
Sure.
Dexter.
You wanna take it away, or do you want me to?
Sure. I mean, I think he's okay. Like I think he kind of sums up the part of the show too. I can see it in moments. of him kind of looking like Michael C. Hall. But at the same time, it is really hard to compare the Dexter that we see. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't look identical to Dexter, but he doesn't look that different. Like they at least kept like the same, obviously the same like um the same like basically this like the same type of person that Dexter would kind of look like. He has the same hair color for the most part. Like obviously they kept the really stupid wig with the long hair, but like the look doesn't look identical. But at the same time, there were moments where I liked him as Dexter, but I could feel something missing. I can't put my finger on it, but I felt something missing from his performance. But I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I I think I would agree most wholesale actually. I think it's a fine performance. I'm hoping he gets more well, I guess that's the thing. I kind of feel like this with everybody in this cast if I'm completely honest. I feel like they need more of a chance to actually, use their acting chops that I think the most that
Mhm.
we got as far as actual acting range was from probably Deb that we saw her at her normal point. Saw her angry. We saw her drunk. We saw her regretful. Yada yada. The rest of them we didn't really see a ton of range. Christian Slater, I mean, aside, I guess, because obviously he was sick and then doing all of his other stuff. Like he's a talented actor, so I don't even think that's
Yeah,
necessarily fair to compare him to most of these other actors and actresses, though. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I think Patrick Gibson is fine. I don't really have much to say. I think I kind of want to withhold judgment on a lot of them until I know for sure the direction that we're
Same.
going. I think I need a couple more episodes to really get a feel for everything. I guess is sort of where I'm at, which isn't. I don't think is a good thing
Well,
after the first episode. Say that, but here
yeah,
we are.
yeah. Well, and even me saying Masuka was bad, I want to see if it was just a bad first impression of his portrayal, because like I've had that with certain TV shows that I like, where it's like, or certain movies where it's like at first I'm like, do I buy in these people? Like I'm like, you're sort of like, do I really see like even great actors like I wouldn't say Leo always does this, but DiCaprio sometimes when I watch a certain movie, certain movies of his, it takes me a little bit to get the character that he's playing. But once he does, I'm like, wow, he's doing it magnificently. I'm not saying the actor that plays Masuka is gonna do this, but I'm saying like there are moments whenever I watch something where I'm like, I don't know if I fully buy into this performance yet. But then
Mhm.
sometimes I do. Sometimes it like, wow, this really impressed me. It really blew me away. I can tell from this first portrayal that I don't like this first moment of like where they've put Masuka in there. I don't love his portrayal. I think it's easily my least favorite. But I think I said earlier I called it bad. I wouldn't call it bad, but I wouldn't call it amazing. I think it sort of is what you said. Like pretty much everything about this episode has just been sort of like middle of the road. Nothing really impressed me. Nothing really like was
Mhm.
horrible horrible. It just seemed to me like it was like you said, it felt hollow, and I don't know. I don't know. Masuka, even if it was my least favorite performance, I'm still going to give him the benefit that maybe the rest of the season implements him well. But just from the writing of his character, it to me really kind of annoyed me. Like I was
I
like,
would
that's
agree.
not Masuka. I'm like Masuka made me laugh. Like, and obviously there were moments where Masuka made dumb jokes. You're like, okay, like
Sure.
fuck off. You know what I mean? Like you're like, okay, whatever. But at the same time, that was a part of his character, you know. And so there are certain things in the writing that I was like, it it felt like a forced like this is the caricature, but I'm not saying they fully did that. This is why it's hard talking about this first episode. Like sometimes you'll watch a first episode, like and it'll have a ton of stuff happening and it leads you to the beginning of the series. Like you and I could talk about the first episode of Dexter for a while because it sets up a lot of different things in that kind of carry on in the rest of the season.
Mhm.
But like this episode kind of does nothing. It leads you into him at the end being a part of Miami Metro, but that's really it.
Mhm. Yeah. again, I'm not sold on a lot of it, and that is the big takeaway that I'm getting from a lot of people is there's a lot of room to improve. That this episode
Hmm.
didn't really necessarily win people over. It seems like at best you have inquisitive new audience members that are interested in what's going on because they don't know. But if for a lot of returning Dexter fans, I don't see this show appeasing people. Um, and it is. It's a very hollow, essentially reboot, or I guess however you want to spin it, of the original show. There's not much of substance to gather here. That's why I don't want to blame the actors for this yet, because we're not. I don't think we're far enough
Yeah,
in.
no.
I guess the other thing to try and be as charitable as possible. We are one episode in, which is usually by this point we should have a good feel for at least probably 2, 3 characters. But um, at the same time, we got to remember with what happened in this episode, this 49-minute episode, mind you, we simultaneously
Mhm.
ran through probably 2, 3 episodes worth of story, and we accomplished nothing because there's not really much of anything that we learned or gathered from this. We blasted through a bunch of payoffs. We've cut off different story beats we could have set up. We cut through different storylines that we could have used. We've negated different parts of Dexter's history that would have been interesting to explore. We've essentially relegated
Mhm.
most of Miami Metro to probably what I would assume would be side characters that are put on pause again, which is fun because that wasn't, one of the biggest complaints you and I had seemed to have when we did our 9 season breakdown of Dexter was that, man, it'd be really interesting to explore any of those people. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a lot to be desired feels almost like an understatement. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be gathering from any of this as of yet. And again, I think a lot of it it's on the writers, it's on the directors, it's on the people that are in charge because the material should be there. It should be easy to do this, but it's not the actor's fault that they're not getting the screen time necessary to actually give me as an audience member time to engage with them and figure out how I feel about them. Again,
Well,
40,
yeah, and
49
like,
minutes ain't chump change either.
no, like, say what you want about the Last of Us, like episodes, like of that TV show, but like they at least set up everything in the first episode, like pretty much they set up like where these characters are going, who they are, like obviously they hint at certain things. Obviously, you and I have issues with that show in general, but the first couple episodes, like they don't fully waste your time. Like there are certain shows where it's like the first, like I'm trying to think of like a great pilot episode where it doesn't waste your time, but you get what I mean. Like
Mm-hmm.
most pilots shouldn't waste your time. They shouldn't be like, oh yeah, well we'll get to it in the next episode. Because like
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at IMDb has a lot of the episode synopsises up. I'm not going to read them because I don't want to spoil it for myself, but um, I did see what the second episode synopsis was because it's literally the first thing that shows up when you look up the show. Um, but it's basically sort of what the ending of the first episode leading up to is basically just him adjusting to being a part of Miami Metro. And I was thinking about this idea, and I want to pass it by you if you think it's a cool idea, or at least something that they should have done. Um, they sort of hint at that he was going to be a doctor, that he was going to go to medical school,
Mm-hmm.
that he was going to, like he was going to be like this really great surgeon. I kind of think it would have been interesting if in his early life he did go through with that and we see him being a serial killer, part like um what you call it, uh doctor or a surgeon or whatever, or like training to be a surgeon, seeing how that clashes, and then seeing him be attracted to the Miami Metro scene and like the blood splatter and all that. Maybe someone comes to the hospital that he's like internshipping at or something. I feel like that would be some kind of an interesting thing instead of just them being like, oh, he's working at Miami Metro again. Like I think that would have been kind of a cool, because like that was the one interesting thing, was him working with that doctor, having those resources to sort of do um getting the information himself. I feel like that would have been kind of, I don't know, that would have been kind of cool. I don't know, to me it was a like a kind of a missed opportunity. I'm not saying they should have made the whole season about that, but I feel like that could have been a cool conflict, like internal conflict with Dexter, to lead him to go to Miami Metro.
I
But
think I'd agree. It's kind of to your point. What I think the big problem is, and I've said this probably 5 times by now. The biggest problem with
yeah,
Dexter as an IP, we talked to Helen back about this in our multi-season breakdown. Excuse me, of the show. But Dexter as an IP has an aversion to doing anything remotely interesting as far as exploring different character options and what the characters would do in unique situations if their name isn't Dexter. And even then, Dexter is very much limited as far as what his decision making skills in the show actually are. It's kind of annoying
yeah,
that what you're talking about, that's kind of what I would have figured this season would have been, was at least partially Dexter finishing med school, getting used to and acclimating to changes in his life. Maybe Deb starting high school or whatever the case may be. Because I'm trying
hmm
to remember what the age difference is between the two of them. I don't exactly remember. It's only a couple years, I think. But maybe she's
yeah,
wrapping up high school. Whatever. There's different things that you can do even with that, down to the home life, down to what he's doing at school, down to what Harry's doing at work. Um,
hmm
Everything with the code, everything going on with Deb. There's so many different angles that you can explore, and it doesn't really feel like these opportunities are even remotely entertained. But
no,
the fact that they're not entertained at all is, I think, what's most upsetting to me about this entire thing is, I said this to you before we hit record, but there is, I think, a good potential show buried in here, but I think you need to actually sift through the layers of bullshit, extra stuff, and fan service, which
yeah,
I guess I'll throw that out there. The fan service people are eating it up. I think it's bullshit. I think a lot of it is absolutely unnecessary. It's actually bogged the show down. I think it's uh,
hmm
in effect made this premiere exactly what it is right now. I mean, you've heard us now for an hour and close to 20 minutes talk about how this episode is essentially mired in problems, and it's because of the fact that they're more interested in doing fan service than actually telling a goddamn story. But
yeah,
yeah, I really don't get it. It feels like it's the classic Dexter issue of, instead of, and again, I was talking about this earlier with the sort of addiction to staying within the format of, this is the case of the week, we will kill this person at the end of the episode. But I think it is kind of
yeah,
that same problem that it's got its hands in too many cookie jars. It's got the financial people at Showtime telling it to keep going, even though, again, the protagonist has died twice. We've got writers that are
yeah,
continuing to use a formula that worked in a show that was a completely different premise than what this one was allegedly supposed to be. We have a, you get my point. It's just, there's
hmm
so many opportunities that they're missing. And these should be easy slam dunk options. Again, if you did this, you could run this show for probably 5 years at least. You could run through
oh yeah,
different plot lines and gradually build him up, going through learning the code, meeting Evelyn Vogel, uh, developing the code and becoming an actual serial killer, going through his first couple kills, and basically
hmm
canonizing early cuts. You could essentially, there's an unlimited amount of stories that you could tell hypothetically, because of the fact that, again, it's sort of the nice thing. There's an air of mystery to this, in the sense that we don't have the full context. We just have what was told to us through the flashbacks. That the flashbacks fill in the gaps, but they're not necessarily everything about it. You can add that context that we didn't have before, and they're missing it.
exactly. Well, yeah, and flashbacks can be portrayed in the original show as just memories, and
Mm-hmm.
memories are always going to miss certain details. And so, this being, I mean, obviously, if we're removing the context of this being his life flashing before his eyes, if this is like the missing details that we didn't get, like you're right, like there is so much potential with this series, and I can already tell they're gonna. Like, obviously, I can't say that without seeing the rest of the season, but I can kind of see just from this first episode that they've messed up, and I think that you could salvage this season if this was your first episode, then you can kind of salvage
Mm-hmm.
it. I think you could, but for right now, I think this is a pretty poor start to what could have been a really great season. And I mean, I agree. I think I think with the way that we were describing it, him going, him finishing medical school, him, sort of feeling the conflict, being a conflicted of trying to be a doctor or trying to be, in the medical field, but also obviously handling with serial killers and stuff, like sort of separating his day life from his night life. I think that like in the early ways, and I was thinking about this. There is a great show called Bates Motel, which is about Norman Bates from Psycho, and it's his childhood and his mother. Which, if you haven't seen the movie Psycho, I'm going to spoil it, but you've seen Psycho, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like you find out his mother has been dead the whole time, and he talks about his mother, and he has this weird relationship with his mother. Well, you set it up. They set it up through like the seasons of Bates Motel. I never finished the show, but they slowly but surely set him up as a character that obviously is sort of mentally not all there, but it leads up slowly but surely. It's sort of a slow burn into who this character is, but we see those kernels showing up early on. And I wish Dexter Original Sin was kind of like that, where we're sort of bleeding into this. You know what I mean? We're leading into it, and we're like you said, you could do 5 years, like 5 years or 5 seasons worth of this stuff, where we can turn these characters into the cast and crew that we know from the original series. But
Mm-hmm. Well, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but the idea that again, Masuka and Angel are almost exactly the same as they are now, as they are in 20 years. It's the subversion to telling any remotely interesting or plausible story with these characters. It's really frustrating.
yeah, well, yeah, it's like misunderstanding your own thing. Like I read a Twitter thread where um, people were like, is there a possibility where an author can misunderstand their own characters? Now, obviously, these characters were made by Jim Lindsay in the original book series, but they were adapted by Clyde Phillips and the original showrunners of Dexter. And obviously, the direction had changed over the course of different, this adaptation being thrown between different writing groups, different people, different producers. So this show is sort of an amalgamation of different ideas, different people, different cooks in the kitchen. But the idea of like, can an author make a bad decision with their own characters? Does an author not understand their own characters? And I think this is an example where I think the portrayal itself by whoever was involved, because I was trying to look up who directed it,
Mm-hmm.
who directed this first episode, because like it's not like that 100%. I mean, it does matter, but you get what I mean. Like it's not like 100% can guarantee if something's good or bad if like a certain director is directing one episode. But I mean, this guy has worked with Christian Slater in the past. This director has. I mean, he's made some pretty well reviewed TV shows. I mean, he was a part of Jessica Jones, which is an adaptation of graphic novel, but it's like sort of an interpretation of certain, of a character, and it's like I'm not saying it's because like we said before, it's hard to tell, but just from a few different lines, I could see this going down as a adaptation or obviously as a prequel that doesn't fully capture the original spirit of the show, but also doesn't do anything new, but also doesn't seem like it fully understands its characters. But obviously I can't say that right now, but I'm saying it like it gives me that impression from how they're writing certain characters. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been reiterating that the whole time. But
Well, and what feels weird, because I've wanted to talk about this since I had actually rewatched it, was they seem to be capitalizing on some really strange character moments for other people. Like they included a son for Harry that never existed in the
mhm.
original run of Dexter, and that son is dead. I guess
Yeah.
real quick, while I've got you, how do you feel about that as a retcon to the show? How do you think of Harry Jr. drowning in a pool because Harry
See,
watched football?
no, because Jenna was asking me when we were watching. She was like, "Who who's that?" And I was like, "I don't think it's Dexter." She goes, "Well, no shit, he dies." And I'm like, "He drowned. The kid drowned." And I was like, "Well." And I looked it up on Google. It's like, oh, this is Harry Jr. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't remember that in the original show. And I think I was telling you over text that they're setting up stuff with Harry, right? Where
Hmm.
Harry had like a they're setting up a past for him. I do think that could be an interesting avenue that they could go through. But I don't know. I think it was very stark. It was a very stark inclusion. I feel like they should have tastefully put it in there. And I think hinting at a separate life of Harry's that we didn't know could be interesting if the original run of the show didn't basically explain who Harry was. You know what I mean? Like, because we saw, I think what's the interesting thing of looking at Dexter as a whole and the character of Harry was when they first revealed certain details that Dexter had no idea of. We only saw Harry as Dexter's of how Dexter saw his daughter, basically. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like Harry was this. He's obviously he wasn't picture perfect, but he was this character that he had cemented in his mind, and obviously this representation has been following him because he's made such an impact on him. But then obviously they reveal more about Harry knew Dexter's mom, and then he had a relationship with her. Like they reveal all this stuff, and obviously it gets really complicated, and Harry basically becomes this I don't know this puppet kind of, which I'm interested to see if they um, hinted at all in this, right? Because if I remember right, he's like a puppet for the brain surgeon's mom, right? Like
I
kind of
think
like
so. I'd
she
have
tells
to.
him she tells him in therapy that because he tells her how conflicted he feels, and then she tells him, yeah, that's a good idea, like about like
Yeah,
Dexter
I
killing
think so.
people.
I'm pretty sure that's where the code comes from. Yeah, that's the whole thing. And again, like you could even, for as much as people don't like that season, I think there's ways that you could even work with that as a concept and tell a story
Hmm.
pertaining to or at least around that. And again, that's the whole fucking point of this show. You have the timelines. You know what happened in other seasons. You can run through whatever story you'd like.
Yeah, take your time. You don't
Take
need
your
to
fucking time.
rush. Yeah, you don't need to rush. And like I do think it's interesting. Like, oh, okay, Dexter Harry had a family beforehand. Like that's interesting. Maybe that's why, when he had the chance to get another son, um, with Dexter, maybe that's why he held him so close, and that's why, the decisions of him wanting to Dexter to have the most normal and like for Dexter not to go on the deep end. I think that is an interesting concept. I just felt like it came randomly in the season, or in the season, sorry, in the episode, and then he basically like he's grieving over this, and he's reflecting on it. Like I think it's an interesting idea, and I think it could be well done if you take your time with it. But
Hmm.
again, like we said with New Blood, 10 episodes, like that. I mean, that seems to be the new norm with TV shows, but it's like the 10 episodes for this. I feel like we could have gotten 15 at least to
Hmm.
sort of, or at least 13. Kind of stretch it out a little bit. Kind of play with your characters, and I mean, I don't know. I think the Harry inclusion isn't the worst thing in the world, but at the same time, I'll have to see where they go with it to fully give my true opinion on it. But what do you think?
Um, I don't know. I've got mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I think it's awkward that there's another child that was never ever mentioned in 9 seasons of TV before this.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I do think it's an interesting avenue to explore, and I could maybe potentially see reasons why it would never be brought up.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. At the same time, the other thing that I get worried about with stuff like this is, so as far as I can remember anyway, Deb's mom dies of natural causes. So assuming the show doesn't change any of that, I had wondered initially, based on her reaction to the kid dying and Harry's guilt over what had happened, if that was actually going to basically be an issue that got compounded. That I couldn't remember if she had killed herself or what the deal was. So I had initially thought, watching it again,
Yeah.
that sure, that the son dying was going to basically drive her to the point of killing herself, and then basically be him and Deb, and yada yada go from there. But then I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but I do wonder about potential residual knockback effects of introducing a change like this. That they brought it
Oh
up.
yeah.
I would assume it has to go somewhere, but I don't know what direction they're going to take it. So,
Well, because like the cars that they were driving in the scene looked of a certain time period before uh Deb and Dexter, like before like the 90s or whatever, or the
mm-hmm.
2000s. To be honest, I have no idea what like era they're supposed to be in, like the 80s and the 90s, but like it seemed like it's like a 70s, like a 60s or a 70s car. I think it was around the 70s. It just the cars looked older. I mean, people can still drive old cars, but like
Mm-hmm.
the set that they were around looked older, and so I'm wondering if this was a child that they even had before they had Deb. You know what I mean? And Deb was sort of like their next try at a kid, and or maybe Deb was a baby. You know what I mean? And I think maybe Deb wasn't even aware that they had a kid beforehand. You know, I think that would be interesting, and that maybe that's where they're going to go is that they both find out that they had a secret, they had a brother that they never knew about.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, it's like then they don't mention it at all in the next like 9 seasons,
Yeah, it'd
which
be a
is funny.
little awkward.
I mean, maybe it was just a revelation, and then when Harry died, they sort of just focused on that. But it was weird though. I when he was in the hospital almost dying, I'm like, are they gonna kill him right now? I was like, I don't remember him dying like that. Are they gonna kill him now?
Ugh,
and and
God.
I was like, damn, okay, is he gonna be the dark passenger the rest of the season? But of
Well,
course, they didn't do
that's
that.
the thing. If I may, I think that there's two
Hmm.
big predictions I've got right now. Um,
Yeah,
one of them I told you about well in advance. I still think because she's the only fucking new character that's been introduced and is named. I think Tanya
yeah,
Martin, Sarah Michelle Gellar's character, will be the big twist villain of the season.
probably. Yeah.
The fact that she's credited as a special guest star, the fact that her character is the boss of the forensic department or
Hmm.
whatever the hell, and she's not in the original show. And on top of that, Sarah Michelle Gellar's a huge fan of the show. I think it's her. It's going to be her.
Oh, for sure.
I
Well, yeah.
had kind of wondered that when they did the crime scene investigation that she was insistent on wearing the booties in the crime scene there for the other new character whose name I do not know.
Yeah.
Um, I I
I
don't
don't
know.
remember any character's name.
It was driving me kind of nuts that they had brought it up, and then one of the big things they were saying was that the people that orchestrated the crime scene had basically insisted on they knew protocol. They wore those same kind of booties to try and cover up footprints. There was one set of shoes that actually left prints. Yada yada yada. So
Hmm.
I don't know. Of course, the
Well,
crime scene confuses me, but I guess that's a whole different thing we'll have to talk about. But that's my first prediction. I think Sarah Michelle Gellar's character is going to be the season killer. I don't think that's necessarily crazy to think. Um,
no, yeah.
I said that even when her casting was announced that that was going to be the case. I would love to
Hmm.
be right. The second thing, I think Harry will kill himself at the end of the season. I think that's going to be the big season finale twist to death.
I
And
can
by
see that.
twist, I mean it's the thing that everyone fucking knows is going to happen. It's just going to maybe be unexpected that it happens or whatever.
Hmm.
Because we've already done the
Yeah,
big event that sets off the chain of reaction of events that make him consider it. So that's
yeah.
kind of what I'm leaning towards. Is I think SMG is the main killer, and I think Harry will kill himself at the end of the season. But
Honestly, I'll put my bets on those two.
I hope they do more than just
I agree.
do a highlight reel of the events,
Just
though. Fucking hell.
it'd be funny if they did like the New Blood flashback scenes again, but they're like they do it to remind you who Dexter is in the second episode. Like they flashback. They keep doing flashbacks and they do like an arrow that points at Dexter's face saying this is Dexter. Like they
God.
just keep reminding you. Sorry, that's I feel like that'd be pretty funny. But yeah, no, I agree. I think Harry, I was thinking about that before. I'm like, Harry's definitely gonna die because obviously he dies in like the canon of the show. But like, I think the only interesting thing I can really pull from the adding, feels like he fucked up twice with his kids. Like he let his son drown, and then um, he wasn't there for his son when he drowned. And then, I mean, you could say like in like an analytical sense, like like that he let Dexter drown in his own like devices, and Dexter, he turned Dexter into sort of this this like serial killer that sure is doing good, but like he didn't handle his son with these urges like in a correct manner. You know what I mean? And so maybe he like theoretically like killed, basically like led both his sons to in sort of a bad path, which I feel like it could be a cool thing if they did it right. I still think it's a little awkward to include the dead son, but at the same time, I think like obviously you don't even need a dead son for Harry to have huge guilt and regret
No, yeah,
over the stuff that he's done.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what direction they go for sure. But well,
Yeah.
hopefully they do more than they did in this first episode, and then it will be interesting. But I guess we'll see.
Well, yeah, the synopsis for the second episode is basically Dexter learns to become a new Miami Metro like person, and then the I think the other thing's about something with Deb, and it shows Deb gets angry at at Harry for something. And I'm like, okay, I mean, hopefully it's more than just the synopsis, but that sounds kind of boring. But we'll see. It's interesting though, because some of these articles, like this one says Dexter Original Sins finale is satisfying after surprising villain, which I don't know if this is supposed to be a review of the whole series, like if they
So
got.
this one is a interview with Clyde Phillips. You want? We can take a look at it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Is there anything else to talk about as far as the main show? Because I have a list of smaller problems, um, but
Nothing
not
really.
really sure what else to bring up. I mean, the licensed music is atrocious. I already talked about that, but it's
Well,
really
we
jarring.
did
A
talk
lot of
about
people
it.
complained about it. I'm really confused about the crime scene that they investigate and how they pulled 4 sets of fingerprints from a TV remote. One of them belonged to a guy that's dead. One of them belonged to a guy that's in jail. Um,
Hmm.
if Deb was blackout drunk at the college party, how the hell did she within 30 seconds get uh, downstairs to keep Dexter from killing Andy? And granted, that could be me not understanding blackout drunk because I've had one drink in my entire life, so I'll throw that out there. But
Well, when you're blackout drunk, you don't like automatically pass out. Like some people do. Like alcohol affects people in so many different ways. It's
mhm.
like it's a substance that like literally like everybody will have different like I know some people that hate the way it makes them feel, and I know some people that absolutely love, like most people, like not most people but a lot of people love the way it feels,
Mhm.
for good and bad reasons obviously. But like alcohol has a huge effect in my personal experience. Whenever I've blacked out, people have told me that I've said or done things that I don't remember doing. So perhaps this becomes a thing that Deb doesn't remember. At the same time, she gets really emotional when he said, like, when Dexter basically tells her what the guy was trying to do to her and stuff like
Right.
that. And
Well,
she's like,
that's
oh shit. So, like,
yeah.
she is kind of conscious. So, like, I guess, like,
That's more or less my
if
question
she's
though,
really
because
black out, then yeah.
yeah, Dexter said she was blacked out in the room. She wasn't responsive when he got into the room, so that was why he threw Andy down the stairs. Yada yada yada. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Just to me, it felt really jarring seeing it go from yeah, Deb's blackout drunk, passed out upstairs. She also
Hmm.
gets down the stairs within literally a minute to throw him off of Andy, and it's like, okay then.
Yeah. I think the only thing that would save that is if in the morning Deb didn't remember anything that happened. And so Dexter can kind of be like, okay, like not like, and he sort of is relieved, like, oh, she doesn't remember, like she almost got assaulted or whatever. Like I feel like that could be the only way they would really save it. But even then, like she has the like. I've seen so many people that have been blackout drunk that can barely lift themselves up. So I don't know how she
Yep.
can lift Dexter off,
Well,
who's
and
has a
yeah,
death
that's what
grip
I'm
on this
saying
guy.
is they
Like,
have
yeah,
two full conversations, or at least two partial conversations about that whole event, both during, or I'm sorry,
yeah,
immediately after the party and then after they get home. So I don't know. And then the last big question that I have is, so Dr. Revis, who is Dexter's teacher, pre-med.
yeah,
Dexter brings in the potassium nitrate. He starts examining it, and then he calls Dr. Revis over. Revis starts explaining exactly what the potassium nitrate would do. And Dexter asks
yeah,
how much, like, well, basically, what would it do if someone was administered this over a set period of time? And would it be fatal and stuff like that? He's acting really fucking suspicious.
yeah.
And the doctor
I
thinks
that was so
nothing of it.
unbelievable.
The best
Yeah,
faith
he's an
reading
idiot.
of it is he's really bought into the fact that Dexter is studying for a different class or taking a final or whatever. But it's a bizarre fucking question to have or bizarre scenario even, to have a student come in, say unannounced that they are working on a final, and then just immediately start scanning potassium nitrate and then ask you what it does and exactly to what degree it would hurt you, kill you, show up in a toxicology report, all that kind of shit. It's really fucking bizarre.
Yeah, well, and like that's why like if like I don't know, like that whole scene I found to be really awkward, and it didn't read like two people were like portraying portraying this scene. Like I don't know, it was like, oh, can I use your thing to scan this? And he's like the guy at first the doctor was sort of like, oh, okay, like maybe, and Dexter's like, oh yeah, I have a final. He's like, oh, okay, you're cool, Dexter. It's like
Yeah.
I don't know, like I do. There was an early scene where Dexter's taking the guy apart, like doing like the autopsy, and people were making fun of him, and I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was gonna lead to something, and then it didn't. Like that was another scene I found to be weird,
Nope.
but you know
He's
that
just
that scene with the
he's
doctor
weird, you
was
know.
he's weird. It's like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. He gets picked on and then not anymore
Yeah.
because he's cool. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to say that Tobey Maguire Spider-Man is like a Dexter original sin, but it reminded me of that. Like it reminded me of like, oh, he's the nerd that gets picked on, but then he's the cool, awesome
Mm-hmm.
serial killer. Like, but they don't really even show him getting picked on. Like even at the party, like you have that one girl that like tries to. That was also a weird scene. She like grabs his dick and like tries to kiss him,
Yeah,
and
that
then
whole
he's
thing
like,
was
he pushes off. She goes, "What
bizarre.
are you gay?" And he goes, "Nope, girlfriend." And I'm like, no one talks like that. Like 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 even if a girl does that to you, you're like, I don't even care if you're drunk, bro. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
You
he
grabbing
took
me?
he
That's
took that
that's fucked
assault
up.
pretty well. Yeah.
She grabbed him, like she, and then she like try like she forces herself to kiss him and shit, and it's like, and she goes like, oh, do, uh, what was it? He's like, oh, I have a girlfriend, and she goes, do you have any brothers or something? I think she says something weird like that. It was a very odd exchange. And then like her friend's like, yeah, he like brought her upstairs, and like I'm like, did you not stop him? Like I'm not saying that she
Well,
had like full
she
like she
tried to
could
get
just
in
stop this
there, but he
dude.
locked the door. I think that's the excuse, and it's like, eh,
Okay,
I don't know.
so, yeah, and then Dexter is able to knock it down. I don't know. And then yeah, I also like to imagine during that time that it took like it took like like so she comes to him like, oh, he locked the door. It's like, okay, so in the time that he locked the door and everything, it took him like 5 minutes to take his pants off. Like this is fucked up, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but
Wow.
like in the logistic moment of it, it's like he is literally still clothed. Like you could see he's about to do it. You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying I like obviously it's a fucked up scene, and like time can change for everything, but I felt it was the momentum wasn't there. Like it didn't feel like there was a diet like if he I'm not saying that he should have been in the middle of it, but I mean he kind of was. But you know what I mean? Like I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it would have added more power to the scene because like okay shit, the timer's ticking. Like he's already up there with her. He could be doing something to her, and then he's not really. Like he was about to. Obviously, what he was about to do is horrible. And like obviously I'm not condoning it, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying like the time frame to me was a little like off. And again, that's a nitpick, but it was also kind of a thing that bugged me a little bit. I was like, because most of the time it's like in those like I've seen like plenty of like teenage movies where like oh they're at a party and then
Mm-hmm.
they're upstairs and they have to break it up and usually they're in the middle of something when it gets broken up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because of how much time has elapsed. So that was a little unrealistic. Obviously, I'm like obviously as a person I like Deb. I don't want her to have to be sexually assaulted. At the same time, it was a strange like it was just a strange scene. Like there are so many
It's just a
strange
strange
moments
fucking
that could
episode,
have been.
dude. I
Yeah,
don't have any idea what to make of it.
yeah, no, like, and I feel like I feel weird for rambling on about that one like moment, but it was. I mean, it should be a powerful moment of the episode because it's like Dexter saving his sister from getting date raped. Like that's like
Right.
you know what I mean. Like that's a very like real thing that happens to people, especially teenage girls, especially at those parties. Like you know what I mean. Like that is something that is a very important thing to highlight.
Mm-hmm.
At the same, and like Dexter is literally gonna murder that kid. He like holds the knife and shit. Um, and I mean, I would do the same thing. You know what I mean? Like if if someone tried to do that to, God forbid, like one of my siblings, of course, you you go full like I'm gonna fucking kick your ass like type of shit. Like I'm gonna like I kind of wish he would have like gotten arrested. You know what I mean? Like I kind of wish Dexter would have gotten arrested or something
Yeah,
that would
he
have
should
brought
have.
him
I
out of his
it's
wheelhouse. You know,
it's one of those things.
I'm
Putting
not saying he should have
myself
killed
in
him,
that
but
situation, if someone had done that to my sibling, I think I'm not even hesitating. I'm grabbing that knife. You will die. Um,
yeah, like
but
or at least
I
beating
don't
you to
know.
an inch of your life,
Yeah, probably.
like
Like
you know what I mean?
you're not
Like,
walking away
well,
from
also
this.
Dex. I mean, it's not like that kid's family can really sue Dexter for like getting beaten up and shit because Dexter could use the excuse, well, you were trying to rape my sister, which is like that's a whole other thing.
Oh yeah.
But um, but like I don't know, there could have been something interesting where Dexter gets arrested. The party gets barged. If someone calls the police because Dexter's holding
Mm-hmm.
a knife against this kid's throat, you know what I mean? Or
Yep.
Dexter does kill him. Like that could be his original sin is killing someone, getting caught. Dexter, like obviously he would be going to jail, and like the show probably wouldn't have happened. He probably would have been hired by the police department. But so that didn't make any sense to me. But you get what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like there were so many avenues to take that scene because I think that scene in essence could have been really powerful and could have been really good. I don't think it was horrible, but it just felt awkward and it felt like a strange scene to me. I don't know. I don't know.
All right. You
I
wanna?
don't, I don't I don't mean to harp on that,
No, no,
but
you're good. Do you wanna move on to the article?
yeah, sure.
Okay.
We can cut this up too.
Sure. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't have to. We can cut certain things out. I know I was kind of rambling about
Oh, all good.
that, but it was a scene that kind of bugged me a little bit. So
All right. Yeah. Yeah. No good. No, that's all good.
alrighty.
Um.
Uh,
Okay. Dexter Original Sin is guilty of beating a dead horse. TV review by Variety. No.
oh, oh, I was looking at a different one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well.
Um,
Oh shit! I've clicked on the wrong one. You're right. Wow. Yes, because
Yeah, because I was
you're
looking
looking
at
at.
Dexter Origin's finale is satisfying.
Yes. Yes. That was the one I was supposed to be looking at. My bad. After surprising
You're good.
villain.
You're good.
All right.
Oh boy.
You want to take it?
Yeah, I'll start from the top. Dexter Original Sin is just getting started, so fans should prepare for a wild ride until the end. Okay. Well, this wasn't really a wild ride from the beginning, so let's
Wow.
see. During an exclusive interview at the Dexter Original Sin premiere in New York City, On Wednesday, December 11th, creator Clyde Phillips hinted at a dramatic ending to the show's first season. Obviously, I'm not going to tease a cliffhanger, but I will say there are in this show several what we call kills. Phillips 66 told us. Which why do you have to tell his fucking age, dude? That's fucked up. Like imagine like you're super self conscious about being old, and you're being interviewed for a show that you're like head running, and they're like, yeah, um, Clyde Phillips 66.
I just
But
well,
there's
there's
all.
that. Sorry. I gotta hit pause. So, what kills me with this is, well, I'm not gonna tease cliffhangers, but there are in this show several of what we call kills, and it's like you mean like kills, like the thing that a serial killer? That's so crazy. That wow, who
Wait,
would have
I
thought?
didn't know
Who would have
Dexter
fucking
does that in
thought?
the original
Um,
show. I didn't think he was going to do that in this one,
dude,
but
maybe that's the
because
original sin.
there's also. Oh my god! So he told us there is also what we call a big bad. So could be hinting at whatever.
Well,
In
and
addition to
I'm
the
gonna
promised
be
kills and big bad.
sorry. I'm gonna hit pause again. So I'm a nerd.
Mm-hmm.
I know this. The creation of the term "big bad" was actually from Buffy.
Oh really?
So yeah, I guess
That's
that
cool.
was where that term was coined. But the idea that he's throwing out the term "big bad," maybe I'm just saying, maybe,
Yeah, that honestly that's not that much of a stretch.
maybe,
We could write that down for like a
yeah,
maybe he's a genius.
maybe you heard it here first. Maybe.
Maybe Clyde Phillips, with an interview with us, basically just hinted that. You know what? I wouldn't put it past him.
I mean, that would be
In
the kind of
addition
thing
to the
I would
promised
love
kills.
to do that. Just
Oh, same.
if I'm in an interview, drop a hint and be like, yeah, no one's gonna fucking realize this.
No, I would love to do that. Like that's something like I've always thought when I would like make like if I ever get the chance to like make multiple movies, like even if I just make one, like during press junkets, I would want to hint at my next movie with like what
Yeah,
I would wear, like you know what I mean. Like I
yeah,
would
yeah.
want to hint at all of them because I feel like that keeps people sort of like oh shit like so then everything you do, people are like oh what does that mean? And you can do it to fuck with the public too because you could be like you you could get like a new tattoo that has like some
Mm-hmm.
like random shit on it. It doesn't mean anything, but people start to suspect what your new movie is going to be about, and so like that'd be cool. I would do that too. But in addition to the promised kills and big bad moments, the Paramount Plus prequel, God, that's will introduce the same storytelling elements fans come to expect from the original series. There is a big bad in the show that we think will be very surprising. Phillips, who excited the original show, or sorry, exited the original show after season 4 before returning for New Blood and now Original Sin. He continued, and from a story standpoint, it is very satisfying to the audience. Oh, that's
I don't know if you, as the writer, can really say that without having people read it and then get their reaction, other than people that are in the writing room.
yeah. Original Sin is set in 1991 and is focused on Dexter, his transition from student to avenging serial killer and member of the Miami Metro Police Department.
Is it really a
With help from his father,
transition?
Harry.
Sorry,
No,
keep going. Sorry.
no, you're good. You're good. Dexter slowly begins his search to find and kill people who he believes deserves to be eliminated from society. So that's like the basic of the original show too.
So yeah,
But in addition,
it's just Dexter season 0, like
yeah, it's stupid.
season point five.
In addition, I like that they give the ages for the actors too. Gibson 29. Um, I mean, I know I made a joke about Tobey Maguire's Spider Man, but like he was like 30 playing like a high schooler, so he's 30 playing
A
uh,
23-year-old, I
a
think.
yeah. Patrick Dempsey. Okay, you know what? Why did they give Christian Slater's age and Clyde Phillips' age and not all these other people? Whatever. Uh, okay. Shimizu and Martinez, 44, um, recently explained to us why viewers don't need to be fans of the original series to watch and enjoy the prequel. The
Ugh.
character work that we're doing is very specific. The actor that plays Masuka, I don't want to fuck up his name, so
Hang the fuck on.
um,
Hang on. Pause. The character work that we're doing is very specific. What the fuck did you do in that first episode?
These are characters you're going to grow to love, whether you know their past or not. Okay.
Well, it wouldn't be their past, it'd be their future, right? This would be their
That's true.
past.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Get owned after that plays Masuka.
Yeah.
Because
God.
there is a very surprising and an intriguing story being told in the latest installment of the franchise. Not much else I can say besides that, but I think if you're someone who enjoys a show filled with humor and some drama, you're gonna really like that.
If you're a
Martinez,
guy that
meanwhile,
if you're a person that enjoys two things that are in pretty much everything, you'll enjoy this.
if you like TV shows about crime, this is a TV show about crime, dude. He goes, so Martinez, meanwhile, enjoyed the opportunity to star with a blank slate. It's an origin story, so there's a lot more liberty to what you can take. Martinez, who brings the role of Angel Batista, a developed character, but this is a blank slate, I guess. I would dare to say um, you could watch the prequel, then watch Dexter in general in sequence. So you don't have to have watched the original to see this one. It's for everyone. Okay.
So,
So
all right, I gotta hit pause again. So, I agree with his sentiment. I think you should be able to watch a prequel before you watch the actual original show. I don't think you can do that here because it literally starts with, yeah, so I got shot and almost died.
yeah,
You kind of
it
need the
starts with the
context of
end.
the other shit that came before.
Exactly.
We talked about it a little bit earlier, but I can't even imagine starting this and having no fucking idea what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Like that's the biggest flaw I have with this episode is there's no setup, there's no entry point, and that's the big
Right.
thing. I don't see it. Um, so the role of Dexter was originally played by Michael C. Hall in Showtime's original series, which ran from 2006 to 2013. After the show came to an end, Hall, 53, returned to TV screens as Dexter in 2021, the spinoff titled New Blood. Boo.
Boo.
He is now he is now a narrator for the prequel, which introduced a new version of Dexter. I know we talked about the narrator, obviously Michael C. Hall returning. At
Mm-hmm.
first, when they announced that, I thought it was a good idea. I think it could establish a flaw that it won't give who's Patrick Gibson, a way to fully cement his version of Dexter as its own.
I think I would
You know what I
agree.
mean? Like,
The other thing that gets awkward is a lot of the. It's really jarring hearing future Dexter narrate old Dexter, and at the same time, like you were saying, like it robs Patrick Gibson of a little bit of agency within his performance. I don't know.
yeah,
We'll have to see how it is. I'm not liking it so far, actually, and it's not necessarily an issue with Michael C. Hall. They probably shouldn't have asked him back for the narration.
no, I agree. We are retreading retreading some old territory, but we're coming at it from a completely different point of view, so the audience can get the deeper picture. Phillips told us, and we as writers also come to understand what the deeper picture of it is. I mean, you probably should know, but okay. He praised Hall and Gibson's different approaches to the titular character. When we first met Dexter in the OG show, he was 35, fully formed. Michael C. Hall kills a guy in the first minute of the show, lives with a woman. Now we meet Dexter. He's a senior in college, never kissed a girl. Phillips continued, doesn't know how to kiss his own sister. Okay. Um, he's developed his own independence, learning how to blend in and build a stronger relationship with his father, Harry, played by Christian Slater. I like that the writer had to be like, Harry, he's played by Christian Slater. It's like, okay. Yeah, wait, yeah, that's the end. I
So
think it's fun. Wait. Antonio Firm. Firm is the last name of Geo.
yes.
I gotta look this up. I gotta see if these guys really, because he said his brother was in into entertainment.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the same guy. This is written by Geo's brother. That is insane.
really?
Yeah,
Well, I think he
I swear to God.
collaborated on it at some point because oh, maybe it
This is
is.
with reporting. It's
Yeah,
just with
because
reporting,
it's
so that
the
could be yeah.
it's a different person. But yeah, that's interesting.
Holy shit! Holy shit! Okay, for people that don't know, we had a roommate in college named Gio, and this is his brother that was a part of this. That's so cool. I think he told me that his brother worked with us or something, some like really
That's
big like,
interesting.
news thing. Yeah, that's awesome.
Um,
Okay, sorry,
yeah,
I got excited.
so to
It's cool.
clarify, not dunking on the writers here. They're good. The I quotes from Clyde Phillips or just and some of these actors.
That's pretty funny.
What the fuck?
He doesn't know how to kiss his own sister.
That feels like the
I,
kind of thing that you would say that and then immediately be like, "Oh fuck, did I just say that?"
I think he meant like, oh, like maybe when he does like
No,
give his
I
sister
know
affection, he
exactly
acts
what he
like
means
awkwardly.
because yeah,
Yeah,
it hits him acting awkward around Deb, but it sounds really bad out of context.
yeah, dude. He doesn't even know how to kiss his own sister. Like, like if I said that just randomly, you'd be like, "What the fuck do you mean by that?"
Cue Country
Like,
Roads and Sweet Road or Sweet Home, Sweet Road, Alabama. Fucking hell, Sweet Home, Alabama.
yeah, Dexter is actually from Alabama. Yeah, I wonder if they're gonna do like a like it's like Dexter, the New York City, where it's like a guy named Dexter and he does the same thing but he's different.
I
Like
don't
they do
know.
like a spin-off where it's like, they could just do what they do with like NCIS where it's like the Special Victims Unit and it just like
Dexter,
does a
Los
completely different
Angeles.
guy. They call it Arthur. It's like a complete.
Well, no, you'd have to do
Anyway,
something different because otherwise people would think of Trinity, right? So
that's true. Not Arthur. Someone else.
fucking Travis.
Um,
No, you can't do Travis either. Damn it.
um,
Okay.
Glenn.
Are there any other? Yeah, Glenn, Los Angeles. Um, are there any other articles you think we should look at?
Let me see. I mean, the one that you started reading. Let me see. Um,
Guilty of beating a dead horse.
yeah, that was actually like one of the first articles I started reading, um, because I that was sort of what came to my mind while watching it,
So
so it was kind of funny.
I have read most of this article. I will, if you don't mind, I'll take the reins on this one.
Yeah, of course.
I think this article, for the most part, from what I can remember, was actually not bad. All right. Dexter, original sin, is guilty of beating a dead horse. It is seemingly not possible for Dexter as a franchise to move forward. In the final moments of the sequel series New Blood, aired 8 years after the original series finale in 2013, Michael C. Hall's serial killer was fatally shot. Or at least he appeared to be. More on that in a second. This development, on its surface, marked the end of the road for one of the defining leads into the anti-hero era. Role Hall had been playing for 15 years at the time. Sure, yet another follow-up, Resurrection, would pass the torch to Dexter's son, Harrison, played by Jack Elcott. But if Network Showtime wanted to keep wringing drops of blood from this blood-soaked towel, only direction to go left to go is fucking hell, I can't read. The only direction left to go in was back. So, just to throw it out there, he played it for 8 years. Then there was an 8-year gap, as you said. Then he played it again for 1 year. Would that really constitute 15 years?
No,
I didn't think so.
because he, yeah, no, I think it's been like I guess he's the only actor that's played Dexter ever. So in the past 15 years, I guess he's the only person that's played him during that section. But I that's
Right,
like
but that
saying that
like saying, "Oh, I played
I don't
baseball, but
know.
I played baseball once when I was a 7-year-old child and
Like,
did little league, and then I played it again today with some friends at the fucking park." And it's like that's so those two things, first off, aren't the same
yes, I've been
thing.
playing like 20 years.
Yeah, and it's like I haven't played
Yeah,
at all in that fucking gap. Like,
yeah, I've been playing. Yeah, that's like me saying that I've been a filmmaker since I was like 8 years old because I got a camcorder and I've been filming videos of my dog and
yep.
calling them movies. It's like that's not the same thing. Like,
Um, so the
yeah,
other thing
that's a weird thing. I also thought, yeah,
Sorry, did you find something?
You
Because
know,
there's something else I was going to talk about in this little paragraph too. So if you've got something, go ahead.
um, well, I thought the last sentence was a little weird, like just in the
I
writing.
would agree.
Uh, like the only direction left to go in was back. I thought backwards would have worked better
Yeah,
in
go
terms of
is
like trying to
backwards. I think
describe it. I
that's why
think
I was
we
tripping over myself when I was reading it.
yeah,
Um,
because it's like because the only direction left to go in was backwards. I feel like that would run better than was
or
back,
just
but
the only
that's just
direction
that
left
doesn't
to go
matter.
was backwards. Just like
Yeah,
either one of those works. Um,
yeah,
yeah, no. What got me was, so if you read the beginning part of the sentence again. But if network Showtime wanted to keep ringing drops from this blood-soaked towel, so the whole point of this, and it goes on to say this, is basically that you can't squeeze blood from a stone, and that's what they've repeatedly tried to do. So, I
mhm.
mean, I guess technically, as it's written here, this works. But if you're going to keep wringing a blood soaked towel to get blood out, then, I mean, it's blood soaked. That would be what you would normally do.
Yeah. I didn't
So,
like that phrasing.
so what you're trying to say, like, it should be keep wringing drops from a blood stained towel, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, or like I don't even know if you could use this analogy because like even a blood-stained towel will still have drops of blood remaining in it. Like maybe if you like described it in like a really detailed way where it's like a pink hued blood-stained towel where it's like okay, like the stain is starting to fade away.
Right. Well, and even then, like,
Like you could yeah.
I was just going to say,
Huh?
the
Sorry.
idea of a blood-stained towel, squeezing as much as you can from that, the idea would be that obviously you've done it before, you've wrung it out, you know, you've gotten most of it out. But if you see it run through again, you run it through the washer, dryer, whatever, and there's still stains there. The idea that you're still trying to wring it to get it out, there's still something of value that you want, and you are slowly getting it. Maybe you don't get it at
Hmm.
all, but that's kind of the point I think they're making, but it's the
Yeah.
wrong
No.
way to phrase it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I get what they're saying, but at the same time,
Sorry,
it was a bit of a confusing opening. So
yeah. Sorry, I am going to nitpick the article for people that are listening. That's fine. You guys,
yeah.
people put these out there in much the same way that I would nitpick the show and have for several other things. I will nitpick the article. You'll survive.
Yeah. We
Um,
both like nitpicking, so
yes.
that's the thing. So
New Blood sucks, by the way.
yeah, it's
Um,
bad.
all right, continuing. Incredibly, the prequel Dexter Origin, or I'm sorry, fucking Christ, Dexter
Dexter
Original
Origins.
Sin, to a great start, tries to have it both ways. Not only does this 10 episode season, advanced screeners of which we were not provided for, or I'm sorry, advanced screeners of which were not provided for critics, wind the clock
Damn.
back to 1991. Yeah, someone sounds a little salty to me.
Hmm.
Where a 20-year-old Dexter, played by Patrick Gibson, graduates from the University of Miami and makes his way into the local police department as a paid intern. The show, created by original Dexter showrunner Clyde Phillips, also undoes the seeming finality of New Blood. As it turns out, Dexter survived, and the events of Original Sin are framed as memories he mulls over while on the operating table. Before introducing Gibson, the camera zooms in on the emergency room sign, which instead reads "Emerge," which we talked about. It's incredibly not subtle. It's super on the nose, and it's
Yeah.
sort of uh sort of interesting, but it's just one of those things that when you call that much attention to it and you're already not very subtle about it to begin with, I don't really want to applaud you for that. So,
Well, yeah, and I have to say something. The advanced screeners in which we were not provided for, you could see he's salty, but like I do see a lot of the times like early reviews for shows will come out and they'll be like, oh yeah, the whole season is awesome, and it'll be like season one review, but
yep,
we as the public only get access to this whole season, obviously like week by week.
yep,
1 second. My my headphones died right in between me talking.
nice.
So, 1 sec. I
I'm
might
gonna,
sound different,
yeah, I'm
but
gonna
anyway,
boost your audio in Discord.
Okay. But I remember because there's a couple of YouTubers I watched. They were doing a review of Last of Us, and they're like season one review, and I'm like, well, we're the season, only the first episode has come out. I'm like, oh yeah, we got advanced screenings to watch the whole season, and it's like, I don't mind that, but at the same time, I kind of wish I also don't blame Showtime for not sending the screenings, screeners. Like I
Hmm.
feel like having the critics and the audience on the same page allows for like instead of binge watching like the entire season, you're watching it, in different in 1 week increments. I think that works a little better, but I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was a funny like we both were saying they sounded a little salty.
No, I completely agree. I think what's funny with this is I found it, especially with specifically Disney, way that and we know that companies do this. They do this all the fucking time. They don't buy reviews, but the way that they buy them, quote unquote, is they'll be like, "Hey, Ian, we would like you to watch Dexter Original Sin. We're gonna send you a copy of the entire season, or you can, better yet, you can fly out to us. We'll comp you a room and stay with us. We'll pay for your meals. We'll pay for your stay. We'll get you all of these neat little goodies for stopping by." And just don't forget to leave a good review. And if you leave a good review, maybe hopefully we can invite you back.
Yeah.
We know for a fact that shit happens all the fucking time.
I mean, that's how the Oscar voters get swayed into
Right.
nominating things is that they get these fancy packages from companies that can afford it, like Netflix and stuff. They'll
Yep.
send these amazing packages for each of their movies. So you're like, oh shit, I'll vote for you. I guess they gave me a free cheese knife. I guess
Mm-hmm.
like yeah. So I can get why they're a little salty about that, and so maybe that's why they're a bit more harsh. But it seems like there is a consensus that like people aren't happy with uh
And I think
this new
that's
show.
kind of the ironic thing because I think not sending advanced screeners is probably the better play. Because
Hmm.
based on the reception of the first episode, I'm not necessarily sure that they think this is a crowd pleaser. At the same time,
Um,
advanced screeners for a lot of these review sites, I mean, there's a reason a lot of these sorts of industries are dying, and it's because um, people understand that reviews are bought and paid for in many cases, using the figurative buy and pay. In many
mhm.
cases, these journalists can't be trusted. They don't have the same qualities, regardless of who it is in the platform that's talking. It could be, I mean, even between you and me, there's different levels of what we would hold as high and low quality. But you get the point. Like, especially within these broad journalistic labels and sites, it gets really hard for them to kind of articulate and defend different positions, and we've seen it happen several times, especially with Disney properties and what have you, Marvel, Star Wars, all that. That they
Yeah.
have a hard time really defending themselves from any sort of criticism that gets levied at them after the fact too. So I don't know. I think not doing the advanced screener probably the way to go.
Hmm.
Um,
No, I agree,
because
and
I
it
think
makes it
go ahead.
yeah. No, I mean from what you said, it makes it like the good reviews not seem like a uh sort of bought and paid for thing, you know?
Yep. Everything comes off a lot more genuine, and I think that's part of the problem now is because people weren't provided advanced screeners. You have news sites that could be upset about that. Maybe that's why they're leaving their bad reviews. But like we've talked about a couple times in the last 2 hours, people are upset with this. They don't necessarily like the direction that this is going. They don't like the feel that this is giving them for where the season is going to go. So it's going to be interesting seeing if perception changes as time goes on, or if we're looking at kind of an Arcane season 2 situation where general audiences are maybe happy at first, but the longer that this goes on, I wonder if people are gonna start to fall off. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, well, like I'm even reading critic reviews. I mean, I know this is Rotten Tomatoes, but it seems like the average score for a lot of these critics for this first episode. Well, this says for season one, so I'm not sure if these people are only reviewing the first episode, but this just says season one, so I don't know. But these are just the reviews that are out now. But a lot of people are saying like just it's middle of the road. So obviously we can't just go off of critic opinions and
Yep.
whatnot. But um, it's kind of interesting to see that like even the critics are kind of on the same page as us.
Hmm.
Sometimes it can be the opposite. So and
Usually
I
it
know a lot
is
of
the
audience members.
opposite. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
well, and like sometimes the audience members can sometimes forgive shows that kind of
Hmm.
like right in shit ways. And like I think Dexter's one of those weird shows where people kind of forgive it. They forgive the bad choices and like the
Hmm.
sort of the pain that it puts you through. And I mean, I find it interesting. I don't necessarily like, maybe we'll both really end up liking it more than the critics, or we can end up hating it even more than
Hmm.
the critics.
I mean,
Like
yeah. I
New
mean,
Blood.
I think that's the thing.
Like,
I would like to say, and I think it's more than possible that the show could 100% turn this around and win us over.
mhm,
But I'm going to err on the side of caution with the fact that so many different shows have had rocky starts like this and they don't recover. And
yeah.
it's also Dexter that I don't. They've let us down twice with different endings. We had 4 seasons that were arguably not as good as the first 4. Well, 5 seasons, count New Blood. That
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm going to err on the side of caution. I don't think they can pull this out. We have arguably more bad content in Dexter than we do good. And it's been a while since they've had something good.
Yeah, and it seems like most people are understanding this show as being just a way to make more profit and a way to fill in content. But again, we can't, I guess, 100% judge that until
Mm-hmm.
the first, until we see the entirety of the first season and we can kind of gain, or at least get to the middle point of the show where we can sort of see
Yep.
if,
Yeah. By all means,
if,
I hope we're wrong. I hope it's good. But I don't know. I'm not gonna definitively say one way or the other until we get there. I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, and like it was kind of funny. It's not like I had like all the faith in the world, but I was sort of at first like, okay, this idea is stupid. Why did they have to make it? And then I saw the trailer for it, and the trailer wasn't horrible, but I remember being like, oh, like the casting at least like they look like them. I was like at first I was like they look like them, and then
Mm-hmm.
I watched the episode. I'm like, okay, I'll have to see when the when the first episode drops, and it's unfortunate that you can't really get anything of substance out of the first episode. Like
Yep.
this is supposed to be the episode where we gain some sort of idea of where this is going
It's your
and where
foundation
where
for
this.
everything coming down the line, and there's not much of anything to really latch onto unless you've seen the original shows, and even then, stuff we already know.
Mhm.
It's
No, I
beyond
totally agree.
frustrating. Sorry, I didn't mean
Yeah,
to
I
cut you off. It's just, goddamn,
no, no,
like
no.
I don't know.
Well, it's the same thing with New Blood. I remember watching
Mm-hmm.
it with my dad, and when it first came out, like I bought because this is before Paramount Plus even existed when they had
Yep.
um just Showtime. And I remember I didn't know that I could get with my student discount both Spotify and Showtime for like so I ended up spending like an extra $15 per month. And I think I spent like $20 and it was for like the whole month, like for 2 months or something. Because they stopped during the holidays, they stopped airing New Blood, and so I had to pay for another month to finish off New Blood, which was stupid. Um,
Nice.
and I eventually got it for free with my student discount. I should have just done that before, so I didn't have to fucking pay for that dumbass show. But I remember watching the first couple episodes and being like, okay, I see where this is going. Like New Blood kind of has a weird thing where they're like, okay, you can maybe it had the same issue where the first couple episodes were fine. I guess they're okay. Like they weren't like, and then it just keeps plateauing and plateauing and plateauing to the point where you're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, this this was going somewhere, but it was somewhere bad. And at least in New Blood, you had maybe sort of an inkling of where it could go. But with this show,
They could
I
literally
kind
do
of an inkling
anything,
of
and I
what's
have
going.
no fucking idea other than just like, yep, okay, sure, that happened. Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, hopefully, Original Sin can like I don't want to go into something and hope it's bad. I mean, like I love the first 4 seasons of Dexter, and like love is a strong thing to say, but I really do like the first 4 seasons of Dexter a lot. They have a lot that I can pull from. I think that like as from like the limited amount of TV that I've watched anyway, like
Hmm.
I really have I really liked those first 4 seasons a lot, but that show lost itself. Even in season 5, it felt vastly different, and that's like the unfortunate part. You know what I mean? Like I want to sit, watch this with an open mind, which is what I did. I sat down. I was like, you know what? New blood right out of my ears, and then the first thing that they show you is fucking new blood. So that I'm like, damn it, I can't give this 100% an open mind because you're reminding me of the shit sandwich you fed us like 4 years ago now. It,
All
it's
right.
it's frustrating, for sure. But
Shall we?
anyway, before we, yeah,
All right. The immediate, insurmountable problem with Original Sin is that the same superfans who form its target audience are already familiar with its major events, because Dexter itself was chock full of flashbacks. So this is interesting because you and I actually didn't talk about this. This is technically correct. Um, it is part of the problem, and we did talk about why it's a problem, but we didn't actually address most of the flashbacks that happened before. Um, there's a ton of context we already have, but again, it's what we had talked about earlier with you can give us different pieces that we haven't actually seen before, which would fill in that gap, and
yeah.
thus provide credence as to why this show needs to exist. Christian Slater may be the new to the part of Detective Harry Morgan, but it's long established Dexter lore that Harry helped his adopted son channel his dark passenger to more debatably constructive ends by targeting other killers. Even the identity of his first victim, a nurse who preyed on her patients, is locked into the canon. There aren't many gaps left in Dexter's early life for Original Sin to fill in. I think to a degree I would agree, but I think there's things that you're locked into, but it's still interesting, like we had talked about with the med school stuff, his
Hmm.
relationship with Deb, his relationship with Harry, the development of the code. You could go into more of his relationship with Vogel. There's a ton of shit that you could do, really stemming from plot lines in any season. Um,
Hmm.
add more depth, but whatever.
Yeah, no, there's a lot that you can do, but
Oh yeah, Original Sin. Well, I'm sorry. I'm gonna pause myself. So it's one of the things that's always killed me because I know people have always said, well, that felt like the natural conclusion to the story. Where else do you go from there? Like, I mean, I can get the first half of that. I can get something reaching what you would feel like is the natural conclusion.
hmm
Much like in real life, the story doesn't just necessarily end unless someone dies, and even then, someone's death usually prompts, people reflect on that, people attend a funeral, people do whatever. Like, I've never necessarily understood this whole, well, the story's over, there's nothing more we can do. That I would like to think that theoretically any writer worth their salt would be able to always find a way to consistently keep a story moving. Better question is, should
yeah,
you? But
I know exactly.
um okay, yeah. Original Sin opts to steer into the skid, embracing repetition rather than putting in much effort to avoid it. Dexter's coworkers, Batista, played by James Martinez, and Masuka, played by Alex Shimizu, are introduced exactly as they will be in the first season, right down to their costumes. Batista is a gregarious mensch in a fedora. Masuka is a skeezy lech. Can't read. And both are already installed at Miami Metro, while Maria LaGuerta, Christina Milian, at least gets a backstory as a new detective who's been publicly critical of the homicide department's disproportionate focus on white, well off victims. She's not that far removed from the woman she'll be in 15 years. So I guess I'm confused. So, how the fuck did you not get pre screenings, but you know that about LaGuerta?
Oh, in the original, is this supposed to be about the original show, or is this about? What?
This is
Yeah,
apparently,
'cause
I'm guessing, what's going to be done in the show. But again, they didn't get screeners, so how do they know this?
let me look at this. That's a little weird. Let me see cast and crew.
Christina Milian, whatever, is she is credited, but she's not in the
In
first
okay,
episode.
yeah, that's odd. Well, maybe yeah, maybe they just heard this out from. I don't know. I feel like they should have at least if this is coming from like a interview with like Phillips or something, they should have included that because it sounds like
That's
yeah,
what
that
I'm.
sounds like they are.
That's what I'm saying. Is like the U.S. article we read did the exact same thing, that it linked in other articles to these are other comments Clyde Phillips made or something.
Yeah.
I don't. Whatever. Um, she's not that far removed from the woman she'll be in 15 years. Gibson spends most of the fucking hell premiere in a ridiculous wig of surfer curls. By the end, he's got Hall's haircut, and his inner monologue sounds suspiciously like his predecessor. Hall returns IRL for the opening scene, but retreats to the sound booth to provide narration throughout. Um, Dexter may be a relative novice at 20 years old, yet he already has his MO of wrapping victims and their environs in plastic, both to restrain them and to allow efficient cleanup, dialed in, which I would agree. It's incredibly lucky. Well, not lucky. Insane how quickly he's efficient at a lot of this and how much he's
Yeah,
been
no,
able
that
to
was
set up.
yeah.
Um,
That's what I'm saying. Like, I he should have messed. He should have. This should be him falling into his routine rather than him already knowing it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, this
I don't
should
know.
be. It should be Harry developing the code, basically teaching him as he needs, doing everything he can to
Mhm.
deter him from this. And this should be like, I think if I had my way, this should probably be like season finale level payoff of he's got his first kill.
Exactly.
Um, sure, his sister Deb, played by Molly Brown, is a bratty teenager. There's a faint whiff of novelty to Original Sin as a demented family sitcom about a grieving family with some deadly secrets. In 1991, Deb and Dexter's mom has recently passed away. Dexter's first kill, initiated by a nurse poisoning Harry when he's hospitalized after a heart attack, is intercut with Deb's high school volleyball game. But there's not enough to unseat the impression that Original Sin is just playing back the hits, right down to a soundtrack of 90s touchstones like Ice Ice Baby. The show could have taken more time to get Dexter in the swing of things. Instead, he satisfies his bloodlust and lands the job, Miami Metro, in about 45 minutes of screen time, which is exactly what you and I have been saying for the last 2 hours.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, New Blood I'm sorry, fucking hell. Original Sin offers some new information via Harry, who gets his own garishly color saturated timeline set in the 70s, with a device that just turns into an echo of Dexter's flashbacks and calls attention to how much the slight 90s timeline is in need of padding out. The fresh faces in the Original Sin ensemble are themselves avatars of nostalgia. Sarah Michelle Gellar plays Dexter's new boss, while Patrick Dempsey appears as a mustachioed, helmet-haired police chief. At least the hair and makeup departments are having fun. Ooch. Ooh, that's ouch.
Damn, that was
uh
good. I like that.
Fucking hell. Original Sin
That was good.
Original Sin doesn't draw any new life from a piece of an IP that's now old enough to vote. Amen to that. Uh, it does, however, represent the profit-chasing retrospection that's devouring culture from the inside out like a termite infestation. All that's left is a hollow structure to be blown away in the next Miami storm.
Jesus, that was good. That was harsh, but it was good.
Pretty rough ending, but yeah. Uh, so I
Yeah.
think there's 2 articles left, and then there was a Reddit thread. I think we should at least get to one more article. I don't know how you feel about it. Um,
I mean, I yeah, if you want to. Sounds good.
sure. Um, all right.
Okay.
So the article I'm looking at now is Dexter Original Sin Boss on that first kill. Why the prequel series reveals that Dexter is alive after New Blood. Another Variety article. Different writer too.
Okay. Oh, nice.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to take the
Tell me more.
regular stanzas, and I will take the dialogue or the quotes?
Sure, why not?
All right.
Okay, so we got
Things were messy. Things were a little
spoiler alert.
messy in the beginning. I'm sorry.
You're good. That's how Dexter Morgan, Michael C. Hall, described his first kill when audiences saw it 18 years ago in season 1 of Showtime's serial killer series Dexter. And that's putting it mildly. For the formative moment for the killer with a code unfurled rather hastily in episode 3 of the first season, when a shaggy-haired Dexter struggles to subdue but eventually kills the nurse trying to poison his hospitalized father. However, it wasn't the whole story. Those who tuned into the premiere of the new prequel series, Dexter Original Sin, were treated to the scene again, but from a whole new perspective. In the new series, Michael C. Hall, who played Dexter for 8 seasons and 2019's, okay, it was 2021, but whatever. 2021. I'm gonna edit this for them. It didn't come out 2019, 2021, but whatever. 2019's Dexter New Blood continuation cedes the screen to Patrick Gibson, who plays a young Dexter as he graduates from medical school at the ripe age of 20 years old and joins the Miami Metro Police Department as a forensic intern. This young Dexter, they said it, whose inner monologue is narrated by Hall, is far from polished in satiating his bloodlust, and he's barely holding on to his adopted Father Harry's mandate that he not kill anyone. But he gets the green light when Harry is hospitalized for a heart attack, one prompted by Dexter's admission that he nearly killed a frat boy who tried to rape his sister, Deb. In the hospital, Dexter deduces that Harry's worsening condition is due to the deadly care of Nurse Mary, whom his father then instructs Dexter to kill. This leads to the familiar scene of Mary coming home to her living room lined in plastic wrap, where a flailing Dexter pounces on her and eventually restrains her to his signature table. There, she pleads that she was just trying to relieve her victim's pain, after which Dexter relieves hers with a knife to the chest. Damn. Um, and the rest is history. But showrunner Clyde Phillips, who served in the same role for seasons 1 through 4 of the original series and New Blood, tells Variety the context of young Dexter's state of mind was key in deepening the scene from what audiences already knew.
All right, hang on. Before I read that quote, I love the idea. This gotta find it now. Dexter pounces on her and eventually restrains her to his signature table. I love the idea that he takes this bitch's table after he kills her.
It's like a folding table that he can
Yeah,
carry in his car.
he puts it in his pocket every fucking day. Yeah.
He's like a guy that carries around band equipment all the time. He just like people always ask him like, "Well, why do you have a folding table?" He's like, "Oh, that's just for whatever."
What if I have a picnic on the roadside? What if my car breaks down?
Yeah, they told you you always need them. You always
You
need
always
them.
you always bring a spare tire iron, spare jack, and you
Mhm.
always bring a table.
Yeah, what if your friends want to play Texas Hold'em in the middle of the highway?
um okay, so this is Clyde Phillips and he says part of it was that we understand Dexter more than we did in season 1 of the original show. In fucking 2 decades, I'd fucking hope so. We understand his relationship with his father and his unstoppable urge to kill, Phillips says. We needed to stay in his head and see him face temptations like the fight at the fraternity. We needed to see how the urge is too big. I love how their way of showing that the urge is too big is to build it up for 5 minutes and then have it be done completely.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Like he doesn't even get a chance to contemplate his urge because then it just is
No.
nope, bye bye.
Coming up
Phillips
on
talked to Variety about.
go
Huh?
ahead, go ahead.
Sorry. Phillips talked to Variety about getting to know a younger Dexter. After all these years, the idea he couldn't shake about how to film a new take on that first kill, and why the prequel series opens by undoing the cliffhanger of the sequel series New Blood. Right out the gate, viewers get answers to the ending of New Blood. Dexter actually survived what seemed to be a fatal gunshot from his son, Harrison. Did you always see this as a continuation of that series?
Well, it is not a sequel to New Blood. It is its own show. What we are doing in the first couple of minutes, which was actually Paramount's co-CEO Chris
Mm,
McCarthy's idea, is showing that the character
there
of
you go.
Dexter is still alive, uh, so that we can use Michael's narration and give the audience some hope, because we're shooting Dexter Resurrection in January, which is a sequel to New Blood. And so I hate to burst his bubble, but by definition, because you have included a flashback that is, or I'm sorry, a flash forward, I guess, quote unquote, which includes the aftermath of New Blood, you have technically made this a sequel and prequel.
Yep.
At least that section.
Yeah, no. It's he's like it's not a sequel, but it kind of is because this is supposed to be his. This is supposed to be the bridge between New Blood and Resurrection, kind of. Like I
Yep.
guess what they're serving it as. Very intent. Oh wait. Okay. Very intentionally in those first few moments, though, the show plunges right into Dexter's psyche while they are trying to save his life. As much as the original show tried to put you in Dexter's mind, this really seems like we are living in one of Dexter's flashbacks.
This is Dexter looking back at his origin story, and as Original Sin goes on, we will see that it moves from an original story to an evolution story. In fact, in subsequent episodes, we shoot in two different time periods. Time period we're in, which is 1991, when Dexter is 20, and in 1973, when Harry met Dexter's mother, Laura. Oh, okay, there you go. I guess that's. And everything that ensued from that. It is really a lot of fun because anytime you move back and forth between them, it is invigorating.
With the return of Dexter in New Blood and with Resurrection coming soon, this world has been more sprawling. Um, was it an exercise to reacquaint yourself with what made Dexter who he is, and you start looking towards his future?
It has been a blast. I had been part of the OG Dexter show, and I get to go back and look at it from a couple different standpoints, a family standpoint, father and son standpoint. You see in the premiere the drowning of Harry's first baby and how that really explains everything that he does. We get to explore the Dexter Deb relationship, how fraught and ultimately loving it is, and then Dexter showing up at work at Miami Metro at the end of the premiere. We shot this show in California and we built the exact same Miami Metro set on a soundstage in Studio City, based on the actual paper blueprints of the original set that my guy somehow found. Nothing is on
My
paper
guy.
anymore. Yeah, my guy. Nothing is on paper anymore, but he found them. So it is exactly the same. It was amazing when Michael came to set and saw it. We all traveled back a bit in time. I'm sorry. We all traveled. Fucking hell. We all time traveled a bit in making the show while time stood still.
The premiere debuts the younger iterations of Batista and Masuka, who are dressed and act almost identical to their counterparts from the original series. It's uncanny. Um, which they don't act almost identical, but whatever.
No.
As if they hadn't changed in 15 years. Why bring back these characters in this way?
We always went for the best actor. I was so lucky to get all of my first choices. Okay, so the odds of that happening. Um, I was so lucky to get all of my first choices, and that never happens. James Martinez, who plays Batista, had a full beard when we started, but he trimmed it down, put a hat on him, and he just immediately became Batista. Oh no. Oh god. He really does. He thinks it's that easy, just looking like the character.
Yep.
Oh.
Jesus
Same
Christ.
same with Alex Shimizu, who plays Masuka. He is an actor and a dancer, and looks enough like C.S. Lee that we could make it work. And then he he got that laugh down perfectly. So hang on. So
We could
let's
make it work.
just real quick. I was gonna
Is
say just real quick. I want to compare these two. So James Martinez plays Batista. He's got a full beard. We trimmed it down, slapped a hat on him. He looked fucking perfect. Then there was Alex Shimizu, who plays Masuka. He was an actor and dancer, and it's like, well, no shit, he's an actor.
Mhm.
He looked enough like the guy that played Masuka. It's like, okay. And then he got the laugh down, and it's like, you mean the laugh that I would say is overplayed in the premiere? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like Masuka doesn't laugh that much
Masuka
like in
laughed
the
when
original show.
laughed when he made inappropriate comments and whatnot. He didn't laugh at every fucking thing or because the wind blew in his direction. God.
Exactly. Jesus Christ.
He actually went to met fucking God damn it. He actually went to meet CS and they practiced the laugh together. Patrick Gibson, he's Irish, so we call him Patty, was our first choice for Dexter. He got together with Michael C. Hall and just studied and studied and studied, and now I think Patty's gestures are becoming Michael's. But we don't say they're the same because he has to evolve into it. And we've got Patrick Dempsey and Sarah Michelle Gellar. I mean, what a get. When I told my daughter that we got Buffy the Vampire Slayer, she said, Dad, now my generation is going to watch this show too. That's really what we are looking for. We got a very good built-in audience that we don't take for granted by any means, but we don't want to grow the audience in both we want to, fucking hell, to grow the audience in both directions as much as we can. This cast of early 90s TV stars just works for us.
Speaking of the die-hard fans that know Dexter's mythology so well, they will know that his father Harry is not long for this world. He has a heart attack in the premiere, and he recovers, but canonically, he dies pretty soon after Dexter joins Miami Metro. How are you going to play with expectations to keep, even those fans guessing?
We talked with Christian about this a lot. When you see the whole season, all 10 episodes, it will have only taken place over 2 or 3 weeks. We can keep doing that until it is time to say goodbye to Harry, but we plan to keep Christian and Harry around for a long time. It was the same
Oh,
thing
okay.
with New Blood. I think this is a lie. It took place from just before Christmas to around or just after Christmas. Which that the funnier thing with that was there was a marketing thing that said that Dexter was training Harrison all year for this. He literally knew him for like
Hmm.
2 weeks.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, it's it.
I don't know. I think if you stick with
Um,
each season's only 2-3 weeks, like you'll get maybe 2 seasons out of this with him. But I think you sooner or later have to get rid of it,
mhm.
especially with this
Hopefully,
idea
it's
of
a lie.
yeah. I especially with this idea of doing big bads potentially every season, having that many high profile killers disappear in a handful of weeks, every few
Mhm.
weeks even, not a good look.
A huge touchstone of Dexter's story was always his first kill, but you already did it in the original series. How did you approach it again for this episode?
It was an interesting thing. We sat with whiteboards in the writers room.
The way.
We shut up. Let me try that again. It was an interesting thing. We sat with whiteboards in the writers' room and we talked about everything. The way we realized we needed to look at it was from a different point of view of the first season. Part of it was that we understand Dexter more than we did in season 1 of the original show. We understand his relationship with his father and his unstoppable urge to kill. We needed to stay in his head and see him face temptations like that, like the fight at the fraternity. We needed to see how the urge is too big, and also this nurse is killing his father, and that just ain't gonna happen. So I think I mentioned it earlier, but the more interesting thing, maybe I didn't actually. The way that Dexter finds out about Nurse Mary is actually a retcon. In
Oh, really?
in season 1, Harry's the one that pieces together that Mary is poisoning him.
Oh, okay.
So none of this actually played out the way that it did. So technically, this is a different point of view because it didn't happen this way. So I mean, I guess he's partially
Interesting.
correct, but it seems like it's creative decisions like this and a lot of the costumes, not like what Harry, Dexter, and Deb are wearing in the hospital supposedly is not the same stuff that they were wearing in season 1. It's leading a lot
Yeah.
of people to wonder if they're even watching old scenes again to check things, reading old
Probably
scripts,
not.
whatever the case may be. My guess would be no. All right. Anyway,
It's okay. In the original series, that moment is merely a flashback, but Original Sin gives you the context of everything around that kill.
visually and viscerally. And again, that's ironic considering what I just said, but
Yeah. What struck you most about redoing Dexter's first kill nearly 20 years later?
there is humor built into this show, and I had the image of Deb playing volleyball and Dexter doing his first kill at the same moment, which means that they at least let each other down because they were not there for each other. But I also wanted to go for the humor of Deb spiking the ball at the same time Dexter stabs the nurse. You hear the announcer say, and it's Morgan for the kill. I just had the image. I was saying it in our writer's room. If you can think of it, you can do it. We put that image on the board and it stuck. That became the fulcrum scene. You have to earn it, you have to pay it off. I don't know about you. I found the Morgan for the kill thing kind of cringe.
Yeah, it's like Morgan for the yeah. That was the one of the more awkward scenes too. Like I like immediately knew what they were going for, but I'm like the way that it was edited and put together, I didn't think was really that great, and I just don't think the idea is that cool. Like I just think it's kind of lame.
Yeah. Um you want to take the next section and we'll keep going.
Okay. Um, with everything that is to come with this season, was it easier or harder for you expected to find who Dexter was as a young man?
Harder isn't the right word. It wasn't easier, but it was more challenging because we have such a fan base. Well, uh, we are
We have
Showtime's
a fan
number
base.
one show ever. We have this great fan base, and we have to honor them. We always want to write up the audience rather than down or at them, which makes my job more challenging and, thank God, more interesting. We had a great writer's room. We just understood the mission for this show. And we are working on several relationships: Harry and Dexter, Harry and Deb, Deb and Dexter. All of that adds humanity to the show. So, that first sentence, harder isn't the right word. It was more challenging, though. It's like the semantics then.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
I also like we have such a fan base. It's like
we have such a
okay.
fan base.
Yeah, we have a fan base. Audiences might pick up on a lighter, kookier tone to the original Sin versus the original series. I didn't really get that, but
No.
whatever. Um,
I
it
think
was more
it's
awkward than it
I
was
think it's
funny.
unintentionally funny in many spots.
Yeah. Was that intentional as you follow younger, messier Dexter?
There is a tonal shift because we are not seeing someone who is fully formed. And also, the early 90s in Miami were a really hot place to be. Not not only was it the murder capital of the world, but the music and the scene was great as well. We've got songs like George Michael's Freedom and Vanilla Ice's Ice Ice Baby. We took advantage of what was there in Miami. And again, we talked about it before, but the fucking soundtrack in this episode was atrocious. It was incredibly distracting anytime it came in.
Exactly. It's like you don't like it's sort of like when people use the soundtrack to set world building, and I don't think that's necessarily what you should use as a crutch. I think it can help. Like Tarantino does it really well. Like especially with like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's like he used a lot of '60s music but it was the stuff that was popular at that specific moment.
Yep.
But it also wasn't like it was blaring in your ears. It was played on the radio. It was played in, people were playing it in like, in parties and stuff like that. It was like it was completely different than what they do in this show, where it's
Yeah,
so
like
abrasive and
what
in your
would strike
face.
me with this was like the one that I think stands out, and I've heard a lot of people complain about this, is Freedom, where it's just Dexter is at a job fair, and it's you have Freedom
Yeah,
blaring, and it's like I don't know, he could just walk around, that'd be fine. Play some score music or something. It doesn't need to be anything super crazy. And what
that's
strikes me as someone that wants to make and write films and TV shows is if you're getting licensed music, that's money you're wasting that could go somewhere else.
yeah. It costs a shit ton, and
Mm-hmm.
especially depending on the artist too. Like there are
Yep.
some artists that like you have to convince them, like in context of whatever you're making. Like Stranger Things had a huge issue with that one song, "Running Up That Hill." I forget her name, but she's a really good singer. But she doesn't let anybody just use her music. She actually has to like be convinced of. Like she doesn't just get a paycheck and like, okay, you can use my song. Like she really doesn't want her music to be put in anything unless like it's for some creative way, and they explained it to her and she really liked it. And it's like that is more respectable to me than just being like, oh, we're gonna use this music. We have all this extra fucking money. Screw it. Let's just put it all in the soundtrack. And it's like, that's yeah. You're totally right though. It's like that's budget money that you're just kind of wasting on. Oh, we're gonna set up the world by using like a '90s soundtrack.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any idea what the hell the show's doing at really any turn.
Mhm. I do like that we've turned this like this
Yeah,
episode
this
into
was
almost a
supposed to
3 hour.
be like maybe 45 minutes. Oh god.
We want to finish up this article and then
Yeah,
we'll
I think
give
we'll
our closing thoughts.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay. So what does the evolution of Dexter look like over this first season of the show?
Well, when we started Dexter, he was fully formed. How many fucking times is he going to say this? Good god. When we started Dexter, he was fully formed. Our Dexter
Oh
here,
shit.
instead of being in the relatively protected atmosphere of medical school, which he's now out in the real world and has to learn how to navigate that. He has to learn how to date, how not to get into fights. Basically, the phrase is blend in. And also evolve his killing method and body disposal method. Can't always rely on Alligator Alley. That will become a challenge for him later on in the season. Everything is in motion here for Dexter, especially the intensity of his relationship with his father and the vibrancy of the relationship with his sister. And he'll be dating. He's never dated before.
Yeah,
I don't
mean,
know. This is
I
like,
don't know.
this is all just shit I would have expected him to say because, yeah.
Hopefully this stuff actually happens in the show and it's not just he dates a girl and then they stop and then it's over with.
He does
Like,
this a
yeah.
lot, I've noticed, with his answers, that he talks about things that it seems like him and the writers might have discussed, but they circumvent a lot of the actual oomph to those decisions.
Mhm.
Of course, now I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but I swear he did this a couple questions ago, I want to say.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
talking about the character work with different relationships, and it's like, okay, but what are you doing with them?
yeah. You're not. So this is the Dexter people know and love, only at the mercy of his hormones and his unrefined urges, which I mean, yeah, which is all of which are just things you deal in your 20s, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously you don't, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like I don't know. Anyway,
Funny you say that, because when he makes a mistake, it's not like, oh, gee, I kissed a girl who didn't want it and I got the signals wrong. For him, it's, oh, gee, I did screw up and I just did this with the kill. What? Oh, gee, did I just screw up what I just did with this killing? The stakes are brutal here. No 20-year-old goes through what Dexter is about to go through.
This interview has been edited and condensed. Okay. Let me see what the comments are.
I was
Oh,
just
oh, you
going...
have to send it. Oh, there's no comments.
There are no comments.
Yeah, you can send one in though.
Yeah.
This shit sucks.
So, I guess with that, final thoughts. Where do you think this is going? Are you excited for the next episode in a handful of days?
So, like I said before, not to beat a dead horse with what I'm saying here, but like the I was trying to be optimistic. I was trying to throw, I was trying to throw new blood of my ear, and then I got thrown right back at, when I was trying to analyze this first episode. There wasn't like we said, there's not a lot of meat to this episode. Seems like we've already talked about all of our issues, but I am looking forward to hopefully seeing if this show can regain itself to the show. Bad start, rather. I wouldn't even say it's bad. It's just like a mediocre start. Hopefully, it can find itself, and hopefully, this can turn into the show that I think it does have a potential to being a decent, a decent show of itself. But at the same time, um, this first episode does worry me a bit. So, overall, I have mixed feelings about it. This can go multiple different ways. I hope it doesn't go bad, but if it does, it won't surprise me.
I think I'm in the same boat. Not a good start. There is absolutely no meat on these bones, which is one of the biggest worries a lot of people had going into this. Was first off, what exactly do you have to tell? What do you have to provide? And are you going to actually ruin things of substance from Dexter? It seems like the answer so far is yes, they are going to pick as much meat off of Dexter's bones as they can. And Original Sin is not bringing much itself to the table. I think it's incredibly vacuous and over the top in certain spots. It feels a little choppy as far as pacing. The editing isn't necessarily that great. Past, I'm still undecided on whether or not I like most of them in the roles that they're in. I don't think we've had enough of Patrick Dempsey or Sarah Michelle Gellar to really gauge whether or not their characters are worthwhile additions. They do basically nothing in the first episode, and they have a decent amount of screen time compared to most other characters. Plot-wise, I think we introduced a few too many retcons right out of the gate, and that kind of leaves me worried about where the rest of the season's going to go. As far as Clyde Phillips's comments, I'm kind of worried about where the direction of the series is going to go, if they're going to try and stretch Harry's direct involvement in the plot and skipping over what could be major plot lines for them to explore as far as Dexter's psyche, the code, character dynamics and relationships. And ultimately, I'm kind of glad that the reception to this has not been as positive as I had initially expected it to be. I am hoping the show can turn it around, but again, as I said before, I don't necessarily have hope that it will. So I am going to hold that hope. I am going to pray that it somehow turns this around and we get a good season out of what's left, but we have 9 episodes. We've got a big bad on the way, and I have no idea where this is going. They can basically do anything they want.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I did find it refreshing that I sort of felt indifferent, and that was sort of the sentiment of like almost everybody. Like it's kind of like cool. Like I guess it's not cool when everybody feels the same way about that kind of stuff, but like the
No,
feeling
I get
whole
what you're saying.
unanimous.
It's nice to go
Yeah, I
from. Go ahead.
Well, like, because sometimes you'll feel like you're on an island with something where you're like, oh
Yeah.
shit, like I guess I watched a different movie than everybody else. I watched a
Yep.
different show, and people tell you, oh, like, I thought it was really great, and you're like, eh. But with this, it seems like everybody's pretty much on the same page.
I have seen retroactively a lot of sentiment towards New Blood has soured, so that's at least sort of good. IMO. Yeah, I
Hmm.
don't know. I do think I said it earlier, but I think Clyde Phillips is kind of the Christian Link of Dexter. I think he gets way too much credit for what went well early on, and I think it's led to this that he's continually being involved in projects that he probably shouldn't be part of. His comments, I
Yeah.
mean, even the ones we read and interviews we've read before with him, his commentary tends to be really vacuous. I don't think he really understands what made the first 4 seasons as special and impactful for people as they were. I don't necessarily think he really understands a lot of these characters in this world, and I don't necessarily think he understands this audience either. As far as the show goes, I think this is a very much paint by numbers, corporation, factory line assembled, jumbled mess. I'm kind of envisioning that they want this to be almost Rise of Skywalker's levels of crowd pleasing, and I don't. I think it's gonna fail almost as miserably as that if they continue like this, but we'll see.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and like I mean, I was worried when I found out it was going to be a Paramount Plus original because,
Yeah,
like I
that
said
too.
in the beginning, like yeah, like I said in the beginning, though, it's like they came out with two like a bunch of like their original movies have been mostly prequels to original films that didn't need prequels. Like I said with Rosemary's Baby, that's one of my favorite movies of all time, and that movie on its own is great. I didn't need a prequel, and then I was reading reviews, and the prequel is basically just a remake of the original movie. Like it doesn't do anything to set up anything else. It seems like it was pointless. And then they're like, "Oh, we're coming out with a prequel to Dexter," and I'm like, "Okay, so these are the same people that greenlit Dexter: Original Sin." So
Yep.
I can't really necessarily put my all my faith in this. So it's like it seems like Paramount Plus is just like, what do we got? Shit. This movie, prequel. Yep. Okay, cool. Like it just seems like a content shoveling down your throat, and I don't know. Hey, hopefully it's better than what this is, hinting at being.
Hmm.
Hopefully, like I said, hope it's a it's a bad start and it ends up being okay, but who, who's to say?
Yep. I guess we'll see. And again, I hope and pray that it's good, but I don't know. It's not looking good so far.
Been
Um,
burned or 2 times or
Twice.
multiple
Yeah,
times.
we've been burned twice at least with this show, and I'm guessing this could be time number 3. But hey, again,
And then
fingers
we have
crossed.
Resurrection.
Let's hope they can turn this around.
Yeah,
Yeah, as always, thank you for joining us, Ian. We'll catch you
yeah,
guys
of
next
course.
week probably for episode 2 coverage. And yeah, I think that's it.
Oh boy.
Bye.